School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Welcome, everybody, to our first meeting in 2022. We're going to start off with the exciting thing of finance, and we have Mr. Rob Welch to start us off. I'm probably the only one that thinks that, Rob, but that's okay.
I appreciate the support, Mr. Newcomb.
Yes.
So tonight we do have, we'll start off the finance report with our audit update for the period ending August 31st, 2021, being our 2020-2021 fiscal year. With us tonight from the audit firm of Hankins, Eastep, Deacon, Ton, and Say is Carl Deaton, who is our representative and audit partner on our district. So, Mr. Deaton, I will turn it over to you. You do have a copy of the audit report at your place.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Members of the board, yes, I am Carl Deaton. I've been up here before you, or at least before most of you, I think. These are the audited financial statements for the last fiscal year ending August 31st. I want to go over the highlights on several pages and then see if you have any questions. Page 24, start with there. There are 3 funds that you're required to adopt, legally adopt a budget for: the general fund, debt service fund, food service fund. There are 4 funds, those 3 plus the capital projects fund, that are considered major funds because of the size of them. The activity of those 4 funds all show up at page 24 and 25. The general fund, the left column on page 24, accounts for the bulk of the funds, basically any funds that aren't required to be accounted for elsewhere. Bottom line, that column, you see a $6.9 million increase in fund balances last year, from a total of $54 million to a total of $61.4 million. That increase was helped out some because of some COVID-related money, Esser money that came in that was used to cover some expenditures that would have showed up otherwise in this fund. The extraordinary item numbers right above that 6.9, that's the winter storm activity. That's insurance money and repairs, which you can see is quite a bit that the district had to deal with in fixing problems from the February freeze. The ending fund balance of $61.4 million divided into the expenditures of last year equates to 108 days worth of reserve worth of last year's spending, which is 3.5 months. So you're over the 90-day, 3-month minimum that I know hopefully that you want to be at. The middle column there is the debt service fund. There was one bond refunding this last year, so you see some large numbers running in and out of that fund toward the bottom. Bottom line, that fund had an increase of $4 million in its fund balance, up to a total of $10.2 million at the end of the year. So that's good. That, again, that helps you through periods of maybe when property taxes are slow coming in, or gives you a reserve to maybe if you need to pump some money into a bond refunding, which obviously helps you save future interest. The capital projects fund, next to it accounts for the sale of new money bonds. And you sold some bonds this last year. Toward the bottom, you see the almost $250 million of proceeds that came in from that sale. Total fund balance of $267 million at the end of the year to be spent this year and future year on the construction projects that are going on. Page 25 is the food service fund, or the child nutrition fund. You see a $640,000 increase in its fund balance, up to $2 million at the end of the year. Basically, what that 640 consists of is the food service fund on its own made about $1 million profit from operations. There was $400,000 of COVID-related money that came in during the year to help cover the losses of the previous year when COVID hit. And then, so that basically brought the profit up to $1.4 million. $800,000 was pulled out as indirect costs to go to the general fund to get down to the $600,000 profit showing here. Those sort of indirect costs needed to be pulled out because that fund That 2 million is right at its maximum 3-month limit on its reserves. Food service can only have 3 months worth of spending in its reserve. You can see that fund spent $8.1 million last year. 3 months is just a little over $2 million, and that $2,015,000, there's not a whole lot of cushion in there. So that fund always will need to be looked at and managed to try to keep that fund balance down. All right, those are the 4 major funds. To point out the other funds to you in this report, page 29, there's one fund that's called a proprietary fund. Basically, it's accounted for as if it's a business activity, and it's your daycare program. Basically, in that you're supposed to, the intention is to charge enough fees to cover its expenses. And you see a bottom line profit of $110,000, but that's primarily because that second line down, there was some federal COVID funds received in this program as well to help cover losses of the previous year in this program of $175,000. But at least this fund does have now a reserve going into 21-22.
Not
Page
have one
30.
because it was a different, or was there a different accounting method that caused it to have that, or is it always going to be 0 to start the year?
Well, you know, in year 1920 had a loss, and so, you know, money is transferred in from the general fund to cover a loss when it's needed, but there are certain expenses that can be, you know, adjusted, that are charged there, like utility usage and things like that, to either reduce the profit, reduce a loss or whatever. Because 1920, I mean, when COVID hit, you know, the daycare suffered greatly that last 5 months of the fiscal year. There's just all the reserves were used up in the prior year, which is why you came into last year with zero. And again, this fund would have potentially shown a loss this year if not for the COVID money that came in to help cover that, which this was a different federal COVID program, federal child care relief funds that were specifically for daycares like this.
So did this have Esser also, Esser Funds in this? Did Esser Funds fall under daycare?
No, the Esser Funds we'll see them in a different place, but no, there was a separate, different federal program. These funds came through the Texas Workforce Commission, and they were specifically for daycares that had suffered in those initial few months when everything had to close due to COVID. Page 32 is the only new schedule in the report this year. This is student activity funds, called under the heading custodial funds. We've never had to report in the audit report the amount of activity that runs through the student activity funds, and you can see it's quite a bit. You know, y'all manage the student group funds for those student groups, the bands, the city councils, the cheerleaders, the student councils, the cheerleaders and all that. And they received and spent $2.5 million last year that you managed for them. The page right before that, we've always had the report that shows you were holding $500,000 of their money at August 31st, but the activity schedule is new. All right, and then beginning back on page 80 is where you'll see 4 more pages of all of the other funds. They are called special revenue funds, basically because these are various source dollars of revenue that they're already spoken for the minute they come in the door for a particular purpose, whether they are title funds, whether they are IDB, special ed funds, career and tech funds, or whatever. On page 81 is where you see 4 new columns that are all of the Esser funds. The Fund 266 was the Esser 1 program, but also if you recall the acronym PPRP, there was a prior purchase reimbursement program that the district was able to get $2.3 million to help pay for primarily remote technology costs and COVID-related, sanitizing expenditures, things like that. But Esser 1 is in Fund 266. Esser 2, y'all did not spend any of your Esser 2 money this last year, or else it'd be another column for that. Esser 3 is in the Fund 282, and then the Esser Supplemental, which is the latest award by the state, is in the Fund 283. Again, you've spent very little of besides the Esser 1 money, those other Esser monies as of August 31st. A lot of that will be coming in this year. And then the Fund 277 was the initial CRF coronavirus relief funds that were primarily received by y'all to help cover your Dell leases that again are for technology. You know, so much of what the government wanted to fund it, what was obviously technology costs for remote learning when things, you know, hit the fan back in 1920. Or yeah, in 1920. But those columns are all new. And the rest of the funds on the first 4 pages are ones that have been around in the previous year. And again, you've probably picked up the point that y'all received a lot of federal money this last year. It forced us to do a lot more compliance work because you received more federal money. And on pages 99 through 101 is where you'll find the detail of all the federal awards that came in. And besides the ones we just looked at, the daycare and the Esser and all that, toward the top of page 99, you see a FCC Emergency Connectivity Fund grant of $1.4 million. That helped pay for technology also. And at the bottom of page 100 is under food services, the $400,000 that I mentioned that that Aaron was able to get of COVID-related money. It was through the USDA, called the EOC, Emergency Operation Funds, that helped cover their losses as well. The bottom of page 101 is where you see the total federal funds received, $26 million. A year ago, you received $13 million. So basically, you doubled the amount of federal funds that you received, most of it being additional, being COVID related, which is good news. I mean, it paid for a lot of technology you might not have been able to purchase otherwise. It paid for other expenses that might have ended up in the general fund.
So the audit was verifying these funds came in, and then that we spent them on whatever the federal program required them to be spent on, much as the old.
That's right, yeah.
And so you're showing them spent and breaking even on those pages, correct?
Well, you know, where we looked at the funds, you only show revenue received equal to the amount that you spent.
Right.
So, and of course, all those funds, you don't receive the money until you do spend them. But yes, I mean, there are more funds to be received in all of those categories. What you see is just what was spent, because that's all that was drawn down.
Right.
But yeah, so with the compliance work is basically checking to make sure that what the government says you should be spending that money on, you spend it on. Okay, 2 or 3 other things I want to point out. That's basically all the funds of the district. But again, in the middle of the report is a whole lot of various notes with more detail. Page 48, I wanted to point out, just to remind you what you have as a district as far as long-term debt. Obviously, you have a lot of bond issues because you've had to sell a lot of bonds with all the tremendous growth that you've had. You see in the additions column there on page 48, the refunding series and then the new money building bond series you sold. Total debt, that total column amount outstanding at the bottom got over $1 billion at the end of the year, which is kind of amazing. It's a big number. The bottom of page 49, I'll point out, again, the reason why you do a bond refunding, every time the financial advisor says you need to do one, that last paragraph of page 49 discloses just the bond refunding done this last year. It's going to save you $11 million worth of interest over the life of those bonds that were refunded. Present value of that $11 million, $8.3 million. So that just doing that bond refunding is going to save you that much. The only blip in the report, which I need to point out in case any of you saw it, the bottom of page 43, The district just had an issue with their depository bank this last year, some miscommunication on a few instances where the district had asked for additional collateral to be pledged against your balances, and the bank misinterpreted apparently what was being asked for, and not enough was pledged. That paragraph will disclose that there were 3 days during this last fiscal year that your balances were not fully secured at the bank. And they were 3 separate 1 days, not 3 days in a row. But that has to be disclosed in the report. And the district has already changed their procedures, their process with the bank as far as the way they communicate what they want as far as additional collateral to be secured. The bank is more than willing to do that, and they do that when you ask them to do it. There was just some miscommunication, misunderstanding on their part, 3 different instances during the year last year. So you won't find any functions that are over budget. You won't find anything else disclosed as an issue in the report. It was a pretty clean audit except for that. And then last but not least, got to point out the ugly page in the report though, page 17, the government-wide financial statement. Again, just because if you look at this report, you'll see it, and you'll see that left column having a very negative bottom line. This is the consolidated asset and liability statement of the district that combines all of the funds we just looked at, as well as the capital assets, the long-term debt of the district. But unfortunately, this is the one page we're required to include a share of the state's unfunded liabilities, TRS liabilities in the area of retirement and health insurance. There is $127 million net liabilities weighing down the bottom line of this statement. And if you subtracted those out, which the TEA does in evaluating this statement, your bottom line would be positive. You'd be a positive 37 million on the bottom. The unrestricted would be a positive 61 million. And that's the way the TEA looks at this statement in evaluating you for the first rating. But just on the surface, it looks pretty ugly to have a negative bottom line. But anybody who understands this statement understands why it is negative as far as your financial advisors, the bond rating agencies, and the TEA. But overall, it was a painful audit because of the winter storm and because of COVID money, but those are things that were outside your control. Other than that, working with your staff, working with your business office, is still a pleasure, and we find a good set of controls in place, and that makes the audit clean as far as a bottom line ultimate reporting. So if you have any questions, be happy to try to answer them.
No, we appreciate your firm and your work with the district over the years, and you're coming to report to us tonight. So thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions on the audit report, I will move to the next item in the finance report, which is a look at our fund balance history and the number of days of operating. I know Mr. Deaton provided a little information, and we've basically taken the results of the audit report and provided that into this historical look. And so if you look just above the shaded area, you can see the 2021 fiscal year end. And as relayed in the audit report, our fund balance is sitting at 61.4 million. That compared to the total expenditures of 206 million, that equates to a little over 100, well, just under 109, but it's a full 108 days of operation. For just comparison standpoint, just to kind of look to the future and kind of see, if we put in some target numbers, and these are just kind of taking get an idea of what would be the impact looking a few years forward. If we targeted $1 million increase in future years per year, along with what, about a $4 million increase in expenditures as would be expected, or has been some of the trend. You can see that we stay about at that 108-day level. In fact, when we drop down a little bit, but nonetheless, just kind of wanted to show that relationship if we target at that $1 million level, and with the understanding that we still have a lot of things going forward. The $1 million target is taking into account some decreased funding or the effects of the state funding that we anticipate in the future that's going to put some challenges. So that target is at $1 million is a number less than what we've been experiencing, but it's with the understanding that looking forward, what we may see in some impact. So we're staying strong, well above that 90-day target above the board, that the board provided, and well above the 75-day target that is provided in the first report. But we do, like I said, we'll be working on some projections and to look at the realities of our futures going forward and be able to tie those in at a future meeting. But again, wanted to show what some preliminary targets would look like, and then also, again, just kind of seeing where the days fall out. The other part of that is the considerations of, as we go into future bond issuances, remaining looking at what that number of days of operation needs to look like for our rating agencies as we go to rate bonds. And so again, just kind of showing the impact and some potential, at least a starting point for some targets, and then we'll come back as we progress through the budget, what those targets would look like. So,
all right. Next, you have a budget amendment for 21-22.
Yes. So I will, if you want to look at your board book, starting on page 116, we have provided our budget amendment, mid-year budget amendment, with looking at, we bring that in two different reports. One, first report is just looking at the impact, revenues and expenditures based on each entry or each category of amendment. And so beginning on page 116, you can see some of the changes, starting with some of the material ones would be, we've decreased our projection on interest rates. As we all know, interest rates have bottomed. And so looking at the end of the year, we've reduced that revenue level down. We also, skipping on down a little bit, we see a $2.2 million increase, and that's timing of some of our Esser grant monies coming in for some prior period expenditures that are going to roll into and affect our revenue this year. And so we've got the $2.2 million increase there. Scrolling on down to payroll to account for one additional instructional day in August. Just a reminder that whenever we go and set out the budget, we don't know what the next year's instructional calendar is going to be. So this is always going to be an adjustment mid-year for us. And it's an adjustment for the number of days that our 187-day contract employees, our teachers, work into August. There's always an adjustment one way or the other. Here we're having to add an additional layer of expenditures for the additional day and absorb that into the budget. Overall, in the general fund, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of page 116, you can see the net of revenues and expenditures is a $2,780 decrease. Going over to page 117, this is simply accounts for our lease purchases. Whenever we take in or go and lease a technology item, in this case it's the Promethean boards or the computers that work with our Promethean boards, that comes in as a proceed once we take possession of the technology or the item. that becomes an asset. At the same time, we have to expense that, and we do that in a separate fund, and that's why it's on a separate page, so that it doesn't impact our general fund. It's just a separate level of accounting that we account for, so it doesn't interfere. But as you can see, it nets itself out at zero. We just don't want it to interfere with our normal operations when we look at the reporting and accounting. Then, if we roll over to page 118, this is the second report that we provide, which is the budget amendment for and showing the proposed amendments as well as the transfers all in one, and showing revenues and expenditures. And again, shows this is for the general fund and completes out between page 118, which is our revenues, and page 119, which is our expenditures, taking all those categorical individual entries on the first report and just showing those in the format of the total budget, which you can see our total revenues on page 118. The bottom line moves from 213 million. The amendments are 3.7. It moves us to 217 million on total revenue. Expenditures, we see a similar action in middle of page 119. You can see total expenditures and other uses moves from 213 plus 3.7 million, moves it to 217. So again, relatively neutral. Moving on to page 120 is our child nutrition fund. We're bringing forward a revenue adjustment from our federal, there's been federal programs that have increased our revenue. And so we're making that adjustment, showing that increase due to federal revenue. The other piece with that is that we have been we've had free meals under the federal program. And so we've had to adjust and move what has been local food service, the local revenue where kids are paying for their meals, where that would show up in the 5700s. We've moved that to the 5900s because all the money's coming from the federal government at this point. So that takes into account those changes and the understanding of the additional operating costs right now for a net. Right now it's a net change of $3 million to the good in the child nutrition fund. That's page 120. 121 just reflects that again in the revenue expenditure format that we're used to seeing. And then on page 122, there are no changes to report in the debt service fund. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address those, but that concludes our report.
All right, thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We moved through the exciting world of finance on to operations. Well,
first one I'd like to look at is our current projects we have going on. We have two major ones. We have the new administration building. We have Boswell High School athletics. First one we'll look at tonight is the administration building. And when you, on the right away, that is the main part of the building, the structure. It's the double level. And downstairs where it has doesn't have the yellow sheathing, that is the area of athletics, fine arts, technology, training rooms. And that's a very large part that you see there on the top. That long area is the ed services part of it. The far end to the left is a little bit of the training room, but the majority of that is for ed services and for the growth in that area. That will always be our fastest growing personnel area. So we've put in the most room in that for expansion in the future. On the left is the sheathing going in on the boardroom on the northern wall. The top left picture is the finance business area with the windows. Still need to put some of the framing covers on them. They've started the painting in there in that area. In the back, They're again putting in the window frames, and you see some sheetrock down toward the lower part of that picture. And on the far left side, that is Ed Services Leadership, that is HR, and a little bit of child nutrition. And you can see you see the main structure, then you see the balcony area. It still hasn't been put in yet, any part of the structure, part of that. And on the far right, it shows it being painted over, that's over the communications and superintendent's area, and they're completing some of the rock around the building. The one on the right is building our offices. That'll be offices in the HR area. Just give you an example of, you've got that, and you've got the open space where there'll be cubicles. And on the left, it shows upstairs in the framing how it's moving along. So parts of the building are being painted versus some are in different stages. So they keep all the subs moving in that manner. Left side, that is the dais structure, the concrete structure that's been poured already. So the biggest difference you'll see is when you walk on your stairwells here, it gives. This is a concrete structure, so you won't feel that, you'll feel the difference there. And on the bottom right, just a picture looking out over to the back of the building. You can kind of see the lake, but that's an HR area. I was focusing on that one. And just the main hall, you can see the sheetrock going in. That's the main area in part B in the Ramsey area. Moving to Boswell, doing the final touches up on that. They're finishing the netting. They got to do a little bit of field work, just clean up on that. And so we'll get the punch items going on that one and finish it up as quick as possible. Some of the outside structure, this is by the top left one there's that fence was already existing, but it didn't have a mow strip and it was beat up. So they come back and put the mow strip in. That way it'll keep the mowers off of it and just keeps it straight. It's not bent. It was already bent. They just don't last very, I mean, they last a long time, but they don't always look good for the life of 30 years if you don't put the mow strip in there. And on the far right, that's the visitor's ticket booth. They're working on the structure on the roof. And so it's nearing its completion there. You can see the gates are in to control the traffic component of that. So it's in its final stages. Any questions about the construction pictures? We're progressing well. We're still in for the middle of summer on the admin, and we're completing the Boswell project in the next couple of weeks.
Next, I believe you have an update on the Trisome Trail High School auxiliary field retaining wall.
All right, in your packet, you have a couple pictures of the retaining walls and what's happened there. So there are two main retaining walls, but you can also see three. They overlap in that area. So what has happened is the irrigation over time we found a sprinkler head that's probably been dripping and it had soaked the area. Then it's that time of year, around October, November, when you put the rye down and it's overseeding and you put an aggressive water schedule on it. And that water pressure resulted in the deterioration of the retaining walls. It is a very large retaining wall, and the quicker we move on this, it's the less likely that more of it will be deteriorated. There is an action item tonight for you to consider to declare this as an emergency. We can go ahead right away and get this area repaired. So you'll see an action item later on tonight. Any questions about this? Obviously, we'll have to do a better job.
I do have a question. Are we doing anything differently in the future to catch something like this sooner? I mean, if it were a watering issue, it would seem like enough to run a retaining wall should have shown up in a water bill or a.
Well,
the retaining wall wasn't strong enough to begin with? Or?
That comes out of the lake, so there's not a water bill there. But we are going back to review our preventative maintenance plan there, because this particular spot, there's only a handful of people that ever go there.
It's pretty remote as far as traffic.
It is. It's behind the fields. It's the only thing that the grass area is used for is for practicing in golf. And so that's No one would even be standing up there in that spot. But so we're going to have to add that to our preventative maintenance schedule to do that. But all the water on that site comes out of Marine Creek Lake. And so we didn't notice a abnormal water bill or anything like that.
Is that retaining wall for aesthetics or is it?
No, it's a structural.
It is structural.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the same question. Because of the drop, because
See,
of
and
the
I
drop in
assume there's a
elevation, it
case, which means
requires
it should have
multiple.
taken a lot of damage, a lot of ground damage if they were built
Yeah, to structurally hold
structurally
that.
hold that.
Support
and
that
It took a
wall.
lot of damage before it
Yeah.
got to that point.
Well, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but those irrigation pipes there are underground, correct?
Correct.
And so that's the method that was used for irrigation on that site, which we're not using now, by the way, because by the time there's a problem, you see that there's a problem, something's dead, or this is obviously more dramatic. So we're going to go, we've gone with above ground sprinkler heads and all the other installations since that.
Dr. Child, it's kind of two parts. Just the main field has what we call, it's a regular PVC pipe because it was the athletic field. But in the area where you see all those plants in between those, that would be the drip irrigation that Dr. Chadwick was mentioning there. So got a couple different types in there. But we can definitely, we're going to have to do a better job of it. We should have been able to catch that.
All right, any other questions on that? Seeing none, the next is update on the bond program.
Our bond programs. So we have the 2017 bond. We still have a little bit of the 08 bond. Have several different projects in those still left. We have elementary 18, which is out of the 08 bond. And then the 2017 bond, the major projects we have there is Eagle Mountain High School. We have elementary 19. We have Wayside in there. We have a little bit of Saginaw Athletics. And there's some other projects, probably up to $35 million above that. That bond was bid with inflation of 10%, 10%, 8%, and 3%. So that was what we put in to help buffer for inflation over time. And the other tool that we were able to use is if we could move projects up so that we could, fight that inflation and get some savings on there. So we were doing all those things. And we were setting this summer to have three of those projects go out, Eagle Mountain High School, and in May, we were looking at Wayside, then elementary 18. So we did an exercise in the middle of the year to kind of get pricing on the high school. That's the biggest one we're dealing with. And at that time, we were still, there's inflation. It was there. We knew we wanted to go down, but it was not realistically out of the budget. Part of the construction was around $200 million for construction. So when we did some pricing preliminary on that, we were within that ballpark range. And again, those prices were going up. So we were just like that, just wait it out and see when it hits the bubble or the hump starts coming down. So that was in June. And then on December, kind of got some news from our architects that the environment for pricing was going up dramatically. So dramatically that who would believe it would be real. And when you look at an elementary, if we bid one in January of next year, it's going to be over $50 million. When we just built an elementary in Lake Country for $24 million. So that's almost double. So was it real? Well, we found out it was real. We bid the high school out and it came in at a price that's way out of the budget, probably $80 a square foot more than what we were anticipating. There were some other projects in the state of Texas that also bid in January, and it was, you have your elementaries, you have your middle schools and your high schools, and that's a scale of how much they're going to, there's more in a high school than there is in elementary. And the elementary was the same prototype 6 months later, and it's $52 more square foot. They didn't change a thing. So when you look at this is really a bond program that we have an issue with. It's not just one project. If you might look at it and go, it's really nice. Don't make it as nice if you want to think that. But the reality is the elementary and Wayside and all our other projects are going to have the same problem. They cost more money than the money we have. Other districts around us are facing the same thing. Everybody's doing a little bit different. Just depends on where you're at in your bond program. from maybe not doing projects at some other places, or maybe they're able to do them and they're drop one of them and pick it up in the next bond. So every district's going to be facing this at some point, but everybody's at a little bit different stage in how they want to handle it. So that's kind of the world where we've got the two high schools. They did bid. We have a meeting in February to go over that. But the bubble is out there. We just really don't know when it's going to come down. And that's the challenge we face.
Mr. Welch, is this the COVID impact?
I believe it, yes, it had to impact the part of that. It's all around the state of Texas now for school districts. And it's a supply issue. It's all your products you're using in it. You know, typically, I'll use an example where the lumber skyrocketed and everybody was trying to get roofing materials because it was going to cost so much. Well, you know, that commodity went up, then it came down. It didn't go all the way down, but it leveled out. But what's happened in all this building construction, what we're seeing is all the commodities are going up, and they're all at once. And people are nervous about it. And they're putting a lot of contingencies in there to make sure they're covering themselves so they can finish the project. That's what I think we're seeing.
You might talk about the federal stimulus projects and how that may be affecting supplies as well.
Well, as soon as the infrastructure for building roads and bridges, that concrete and steel, that's going to be another factor that's out there. Because it's just like what we went through with steel, when you had Amazon, you had Tesla, all those taking up the steel production time. At some point, you know, that's going to hit that area in the infrastructure. So we don't know what that means. You've got a lot of projects in the commercial area that people are just saying we're holding off. So they just can't afford it. They're just waiting because it's too much money. Everybody's doing a little bit different things depending on where they're at and their need. You know, can they put it off? They're going to put it off. If they can't, then they got to come up with a different plan to be able to afford what they want.
Is this impacting our new neighborhoods and homes that are going up? Have we heard from the builders in regards to that?
I haven't really heard from the builders, but I have looked at the prices for homes, and just north of the admin out there, you've got homes that are under 1,000, 1,500 square feet, 1,500 square feet homes, and they're asking $350,000 for them. So the whole area, even in Tarrant County and Parker County, just any home that's selling is 17% higher than it was the previous year. And that's probably all around North Texas. That's the two I'm aware of. So the asking price just keeps going up. And I don't know if all that's profit. In existing homes, that probably, it's just what the market is getting.
And talking to a supplier that lives in our district for residential, they're seeing cost and their materials go up 25%, but they're passing those on to the consumer, therefore the price. So we don't know how much of that price escalation is simply the market of those homes or profit, but it looks like a lot of that just has to do with the cost of those items. And we also, just in talking with people are more likely to buy everything up when they can get it. Excuse the example, but people hoarding paper towels and everything else when we were in those times, not knowing if they'd be there. A similar attitudes occurred with materials, where when they go to buy things, they're buying them all at one time rather than buying them. Remember the whole just-in-time kind of philosophy? Just-in-time is now. I mean, so if you can get steel now, they're getting it, bringing it on. In fact, the two companies we talked to, Regal Mountain High School, would talk about buying all the materials within the first 2 months. Is that correct?
They'll get everything under contract, and they'll get the materials on site as soon as they can. They'll store them on site. And because that's the biggest fear, is it's going to impact your schedule at some point. If you don't have it, it becomes a critical path item if it does. So that is a tool they're using. The day after our high school bid, steel prices went up $170,000 in one day. Now, could it go back down the next day? Might have, but it's volatile. And that's what makes everybody nervous. And even as we talk to them, some of the contracts, the subcontractors aren't holding their price for very long, and everybody's nervous about it. And it impacted in our pricing.
And Ms. Hadley mentioned COVID. Part of, we believe that the COVID effect here is the fact that we do not see a necessary end in sight. This is more something that I think in the summer, when we were pricing things, people believed the vaccine would come out and we wouldn't be talking about COVID today. And then came the various variants that we're dealing with, and now a belief that maybe more variants would be coming at some point, and that's made things a lot more difficult in the supply market. And also people are making materials for us, and so some things that were relatively simple to get are now becoming increasingly more difficult in many different areas. And that's the hard part, is that you do have a market bubble. You know, stocks go up and down, you know, interest rates go up and down, all those factors we measure. The difference here is that it's not under the environment of COVID. That's kind of created some different conditions there of trying to guess, if you will, okay, or hypothesize when that bubble will end. And then if it ends, will it end, meaning that it just doesn't continue to go up at that rate, or does it stagnate or plateau or even go down? And so traditionally, we know when we've talked about construction prices, rarely do they go down. But at some points they do. In fact, when Chisholm Trail High School was built, that was the lowest construction prices in recorded history of that in the 20th and 21st century. So we built that at the exact right time. And so this is at this point, the antithesis of that. One other thing, if you mind telling the board about the bond planning committee and our meeting process and schedule.
Okay, we have our last scheduled meeting with the bond steering committee is this Thursday. We'll meet at Marine Creek, and our first two meetings were really recapping what we've done with our bond program. So there's a lot of show and tell. First one was 80 pages with pictures and stuff of that nature. And we showed them a list of potential projects that we were looking at. The second meeting, we talked in depth about the projects, more so what they were. And then we talked about prioritizing growth versus equity and so forth. And then some projects in there might jump up just depending on the need of them. The third meeting last week was more, what we just presented to y'all, is about our bond program and what we're facing. So it was not as, it was a more sobering meeting, if you will, of just having to hear that and try to take it in. And, you know, then at the end of the day, what does that mean to us? And so we narrowed down some of the projects before we went to the meeting, just saying, I mean, I think what we're really, because of this uncertainty, those projects we presented to them were important projects, but we may not be able to do them all right now in this bond program that we're looking at for the 22. Plus with the prices of uncertainty, we'd be escalating it out so far. It's a challenge, and it really not be a true representation of what the price of it is. So what we're really concentrating with at the end of it, really, and what we're going to discuss this week, is really narrowing the scope of that bond to the things that we can do, because we still have a cash flow issue. Because what's happened is these prices for an elementary, in one case, it's doubled in 2 years. So instead of building 2 elementaries, we can only build 1. So the things that we were used to do, like we were building in the last 3 years, we'll cut that in half. So that's what's going to happen to our cash flow that we're worried about when we look at that. So realistically, if we put all or 3/4 of those projects in, and we wouldn't be getting to sell them until 2030, just because of cash flow, and they would have this COVID inflation in them. And that would not be the market we'll be in. So we're going to try to narrow that scope down of what that is.
And property value growth, the taxable assessed values, we're using a 9% indicator of growth. And that is, and it's not 9% every year, but this next year, we know with property values, marketable values, we usually, logic would say those get passed on. We know sometimes we believe that before, and they have not been, but we've also experienced years in the last decade where we were looking at 13% growth. And so we're still using conservative estimates in our taxable assessed values. Obviously, that would change things because that changes our capacity on that side. So we'll certainly measure that. But I want to say the bond committees, they've done a great job. It's difficult work to go through everything. And we have a good representation of grade levels and community members and people that are relatively new to the district and people who have been here. And they've done a very good job asking questions that have helped us round out all of our work. So we look forward to seeing them on, and we've done it on site. I mentioned Marine Creek, but we were at Saginaw Elementary last week, and then we were at Lake Country the prior week. So we've kind of made a little tour of our district as we've done this as well.
So the next Thursday, you anticipate them coming out with some sort of a ranking of what are the
Yes.
top ones that we realistically can do, and
Yes.
some sort of recommendation on how we're going to handle this COVID inflation number?
Yes. It's going to be a question of not really if, but when. And so the when part becomes a prioritization of which one can you do first. And so there's going to be those discussions about priorities in that area that then would be brought, well, once they finalize that work, if we need to get another meeting in, we will in order to complete that. We think we may be able to complete it on Thursday. And then during the meeting on February the 8th, they'll bring to you a recommendation moving forward. That is not an action item that evening, that's a review, so that gives you time to ask questions. They can do, y'all may say, well, that's great, but we want you to go back and do some work here. We do have a week later, a scheduled meeting for a action item, although we could push that off if we had to. But do know on February the 8th, we do have the construction contracts for from the one company that we'll choose to bring to you for Eagle Mountain High School. So that's a decision that we've asked for them, both companies, even though one hasn't been chosen, to have them extend their pricing to February the 8th. And so we don't look at another extension. Steel is the example, they need to lock things in if we're going to do this work. They're going to purchase a lot of the materials early.
Yeah, they'll sign all their subs within the first 2 weeks if they can get them done, not quicker.
All right, thank you. That's sobering news. Next, we move to Education Services Report, and our first is the intent to adopt the District of Innovation Plan. Dr. Barnes.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Tonight we are going to talk about the renewal of the Esser, sorry, I just read that. Okay. The renewal of our District of Innovation.
You're going to tie Esser into it some way?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Anything to get more money. We are a part of the first districts in the state to be in the first round of the renewal of our District of Innovation. A reminder that this was passed in the 84th legislation, so it's been around for quite a while. We are very excited because, as usual, we had an amazing community members, business leaders, parents, students' thoughts, and administrators and teachers on our DPAC that came together to determine what was going to be the best for our district and what was going to make the greatest impact. For the renewal, we have focused on 4 areas for this time. The first one is Educator certification requirement. We are continuing this from the very first DOI, but this is the difference. In our first DOI, we limited it to CTE certification only. What we are asking the board to look at and consider is that we would actually open this up to any certification. 2 caveats to this though. The law states as of today that you are required to have bilingual, ESL, and special education only certified individuals within those classrooms. There is discussion that due to the climate that we are in today, that they're looking at possibly changing that. The second caveat is, does this mean then that we're just going to hire anybody to just come into our classrooms? And absolutely not. What this is going to allow us to do is to think more outside of the box. So just like with our CTE classrooms, we were able to go out and hire individuals that were with the emergency first responders to come in and help teach classes. We were able to access individuals in the law field to come in and teach classes and so forth. What this is going to allow us to do is, again, an example would be that we would be able to hire individuals that have ASL certification but may not have the Texas certification. This would allow us also to have the ability to where we can hire individuals from other states. We can hire individuals from other countries and so forth. So this does allow us to broaden where we are able to bring in individuals. But just as we did with our first District of Innovation, is that we will have a process that if we do plan on hiring an individual, but then keeping them, it's not a temporary per se position, then just as we did with our CTE individuals, we then got them enrolled and began their certification studies for the state of Texas.
So does this mean there would be 0 aides in any special ed classroom? Since they're not certified educator?
These are teachers. So the teachers have to be certified in special education to be in a special education classroom.
We have uncertified ones in ours now that are.
No, right now, the requirements are is that your teachers are certified if they're in a special education classroom.
Okay,
Well-
I'm reading more into this than there is in this. So you can still have aides and stuff
Oh,
like
yes,
that in
sir.
there to help.
This is
Okay.
teachers only. Yes,
All right.
sir. No, great question. Thank you. Please
Fair
ask. The second aspect that we're looking at is a continuation from the very first DOI, is that this would allow us to start our school year prior to the fourth Monday in August. We would like to keep that. The next two are brand new that we would appreciate your consideration, is the School Health Advisory Council. The law has changed with that and has a requirement of meeting 4 times a year. And not only meeting 4 times a year, but it now follows the schedule of an open board meeting. What this will allow us to do is the SHAC committee is extremely important and does absolutely fantastic things to help us with our health curriculum and our lessons for social, emotional, and so forth. 4 times. Sometimes it's not needed. So with the District of Innovation, this would allow us to go meet twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. And of course, by all means, there's going to be some years that you may need to meet 3 times, and that is definitely okay. But this would allow us to then, again, if we needed to only meet twice, we would be able to do so. The last one is the removal of unwanted visitors. Again, the law changed on this, I believe, 2 years ago, the legislation prior. They came back and said that you needed to give someone warning prior to removing any individuals that are not presenting the behavior that we expect in Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. What this is going to allow us to do is that Mr. Ramirez, and of course any of our administration, that if someone is presenting behavior that's not in anyone's best interest, that they would be allowed to be removed from the facility immediately.
Just a note on this, this wouldn't change current behavior. Our current behavior has been to address issues if somebody comes onto the campus and there's, again,
We invite them.
well, if they're showing behavior that's inappropriate, and really, just to let y'all know, this is a handful, I mean, probably single digits in
Oh.
a year. So this is not anyone that's quote upset. We're talking
No.
about somebody that's making threats and things like that. And so unfortunately, I think the law was trying to solve a perception maybe that people were just moved indiscriminately, while that's not the case, certainly not for us. And so this really didn't change current behavior. And just to let you know, it just gives us the empowerment to do that without going through this warning process that really puts another
Layer.
on things.
Yes, sir. Very excited that once again, our DPAC, we voted on each individual exemption, and then we voted on the DOI renewal as a whole, and it was unanimous this year with 100% of individuals approving the 4 recommended exemptions, and then of course the overarching plan itself. What is the development or the timeline for this plan? Is currently, it has been on our website at the board meeting before last. You already had We talked about the permission of letting TEA know that you wanted to look into doing a renewal. So we have already informed TEA of that. So in February, with your permission, we would need to have a public hearing. And then as the Board of Trustees, that you would take action on renewing the District of Innovation. This is a reminder that Texas Education Agency has no authority over your District of Innovation. It is from the Board of Trustees of the local independent school district. What we are currently working on right now, Andrea White, who always does an amazing job when it comes to policies, she is now taking each of these policies, making sure that they match with our policies. What do we need to change? What would we need to do? Most importantly, with your DOI is the administrative regs. What are we now going to need to put in place for that? And then we will bring to you any changes that are required in our policies prior to July, because the official renewal of the DOI will start in January of 2022. So any questions that you have?
Nope, we're looking forward to the meeting where we can review the policy and vote on putting it in place. We have a public hearing, is that what I read in that
Yes,
too?
you're required.
To have a public, okay.
Yes.
All right.
And one thing, President Newcomb, that we wanted to make very clear as well is even though we are one of the first districts in the state, we're in that very initial group doing this. We have worked very closely with other districts and also our attorneys just to make sure that we are all following the correct required steps that the governor laid out.
We're all on about the same timeline as far as report, board approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have a couple of reports left, but it is 6, so it is currently 6:02 p.m. on January 24th, 2022. This board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meeting Act. 551.071, purpose of private consultation with board's attorney. 551.072, purpose of deliberating a purchase exchange of a leased value of real property. 551.074, for the purpose of deliberating appointment, employment, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer. Including tonight will be the contract renewals for the superintendent's leadership team. 551.075, for the purpose of deliberations regarding security. 551.082 for discipline of a public school child or complaint against personnel, and 551.0821 to discuss specific personal identifying information about a student.
Here's your pen.
Pass it there.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District. The board is reconvening the public meeting on January 24th, 2022 at 7:08 p.m. and will now consider the subject set forth in the posted agenda. Welcome, everybody, to our January meeting. We're so excited you're here. Thank you for all the posters and the words of appreciation. We'll speak to that a little bit later, I'm sure, but we appreciate that. And to start our meeting off, opening ceremony is Lake Country Elementary School. And Ms. Bracy, welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting Lake Country on this very special evening to say the pledges for the opening ceremony. And thank you, board members, for your service and dedication to EMS ISD schools. We're very fortunate to have such a great school board in our school district. So I'd like to introduce some of our fine lions that came with me this evening. I have a representative from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and they were selected by the teachers of their grade level to represent their grade level. So they are our finest Lion leaders from Lake Country Elementary School. So our first grade Lion leader is Kate Copeland. Come on up here. Kate is the son of Carrie and Anthony Copeland. He is a member of the Texas Elite Wrestling Team. And in the spring, he also loves to play baseball. And when he grows up, he hopes to either be a professional wrestler or professional baseball player. That's Kate. And, So we practice sitting back down, so we're going to stay up here right now. So our second grade student is Max Kuhn. Max is the son of Christine and Joshua Kuhn, and Max likes to play basketball for the YMCA basketball team, and he's also a member of the Lake Country PACE program, and he loves to play soccer, and that's Max Kuhn. And then our third grade representative is Talia Edwards. And Talia is the daughter of Lori and Tyrell Edwards. And she participates in dance and cheer, and she enjoys jumping on her trampoline. And in school, she loves science, and she hopes to grow up to be a scientist. And then our fourth grader is Harlow Dabbs. Harlow is the daughter of Megan Dabbs and Jamie Dabbs, and Harlow is active in competitive gymnastics at Kramer's World of Gymnastics. She also enjoys playing soccer for the Northwest YMCA. She volunteers her time for the Share a Smile Ambassador Program, and most recently she worked a donation drive for the Eagle Mountain Pregnancy Center. She's also a title holder for various national beauty pageants around the Metroplex and won first place for the Mega Ultimate Grand Supreme Charming Pageants of Texas. So that's Harlow. And Eureka Mongongo is our fifth grader. He is the son of Christopher Mongongo and Karine Latombi. And Christopher loves to watch football and play outside. And when he grows up, he hopes to play professional football. And that is Eureka. And last but not least, we have Terry Lynn Holtz. She is our assistant principal. So at this time, if you'll all please rise and join us in reciting the Pledge to the American and to the Texas flag. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Now please remain standing and join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
Well, thank you, Lake Country Lions. It's nice to hear y'all's roar today to start our meeting off, so thank you. Megan?
Good evening. January is always one of my favorite board meeting months because it decorates the boardroom so nicely. Instead of just blue walls, we have all the pretty posters and stuff, so I really enjoy seeing that. We are here to talk about board recognition, School Board Recognition Month. So each year, the governor and the Texas Association of School Boards, as you know, designates January as School Board Recognition Month. The theme for this year's celebration is Rising Above. I don't think there could be one any more fitting than Rising Above with everything we've all been dealing with as school district communities. As part of this recognition in EMS ISD, each school adopts a board member to whom they show appreciation throughout the year. Then they also have a special opportunity in January to give a little extra recognition through posters and gifts of recognition and appreciation for all that you do for our schools. In addition, the communications department always tries to do a little something special. This year we are featuring the critical role of a board member on our social media. Many of you already know because I've reached out to you about these, but if you'll be watching on our social media, we've got each one of our trustees talking about one of the individual important critical roles that a school board represents in a community. And so we're excited to share those roles and bring some light into the job that you do here and the critical functions that you have. So that's going to be it started today, and that'll run throughout the rest of this month. So with that, you have a lot of things to carry to the car tonight. So we will be here to help you with that. But the communications and marketing department does join our schools, our departments, and our leadership in thanking all of you, each one of our board members, for your dedication, commitment, and service to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. The love and appreciation goes right back, but we thank you. This always is a special time for us. So we thank you for everyone that helped make it that way. We do have another special recognition from Texas Association of School Boards, the TASB by board rebate check. Mr. Welch.
It brings me great pleasure to introduce Don Elsom with the TASB, or Texas Association of School Boards by board program. Mr. Elsom, I will let you take this.
First of all, let me just say thank you for letting me be here. This is the second time I've gotten to come by and present a check to y'all. I've been retired 2 years. I've sat behind that desk with y'all at different times. And so I want to say how much I appreciate you personally and how much TASB appreciates you too. We're here to serve you and to help you as much as possible. Tonight, we get to recognize some things that are going on in your district, some really good things. And I know you all are ecstatic with your purchasing department, with your finance department, and I get the pleasure of coming in and presenting a check to the district for their rebate for the by board purchasing co-op. Most of you already know, but co-ops save the district money in soft costs plus in purchasing because it increases your purchasing power, but it also saves you administrative costs for having to go out for quotes and bids and all that. That's done for you, and so your staff has more time to serve your children and your district. And this year, Eagle Mountain Saginaw did a huge amount. Not unusual, but this one is really good this year. And so it's my pleasure to present to you a check for $100,535 to the district. Go back into the district office. And to let you know that I went back and did a little research. Your purchasing department, your finance department has put over $250,000 back into the district coffers over the last 3 years alone. So they've done a wonderful job. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. That concludes our recognition portion. So we're going to move into some reports. So it's a good time if anybody would like to stand up and go. You're welcome to stay and listen to Dr. Parker, but we appreciate you so much. Thank you, parents, for bringing them. All right, we have 2 reports that we did not finish from our 5 o'clock session, and the first is a semester exam research report. Dr. Parker.
Doesn't that sound riveting, exciting, full of joy? And good evening, and we do appreciate all of you and your work on our school board. Appreciate you very much. It's been wonderful to get to know you and see the work that you're doing. If you remember, back in June of last year, we brought a report to the board on semester exams, and we thought at that time we need to go back just because of things happening with the pandemic and change, and see what else we could find out. And I want to share that tonight, the evidence of our continued research. I'm going to take you through our current status as well as survey results from both teachers, alumni, and students. So let's start with our current status. Semester exams have been given at the end of each semester. They count for 1/7 of the final semester grade, and they're typically multiple choice, quick to scan, quick to grade, quick to get into the grade book. Semester exam reviews take up learning time, sometimes as much as 7 school days. Semester exam exemptions are given in the second semester of every year. We asked 3, well, we've seen 2 questions, so I'm not sure what happened to my first question here.
In our report.
Here it is. Okay, sorry about that. We surveyed, I went to DPAC and asked DPAC to answer the questions on the survey and to send out to fellow peers as well. And I was just trying to get a sampling of what their opinion was about semester exams. How are they using them? They answered these 3 questions. Do you believe a comprehensive exam is the best method to test a student on content retention and mastery? 80% of the 51 teachers stated no. Second question, if you could choose between giving a comprehensive semester final exam or a unit exam or a project presentation, which would you choose? Again, 80% of the teachers preferred the unit exam or a project or presentation. The third question was, are the semester exams currently used as part of the PLC process? In other words, do they go back to address the questions, to change practice, teaching, or spiral material back into the curriculum? This was 50% yes and 50% no. With semester exams, we really just started the spiraling piece last year. So that's part of the reason previously we had not. By the way, all of the survey results were taken before this end of this first semester. They were taken in October, November. We visited with students and sent this out through the DPAC, their classes. In addition to this, I had another, I believe it was 24 secondary students in our voice committee. Their results are not part of this because I didn't give them the survey. I just took their answers and they parallel this. Number 1, do you find comprehensive exams taken at the end of semester adding value to your overall learning experience? 67% who took the survey stated the semester exam did not add value to the learning experience. The 24 student voice committees all stated it did not add value. The second question, if you could complete an end of semester presentation or project or take a unit exam rather than this comprehensive semester exam, which would you select? 80% chose the first choice of presentation, project, or unit exam. 100% of the student voice stated they would prefer a project, a presentation, or a unit exam. The next group that our counseling department went out and interviewed, tried to get information from, they sent to our top universities our students attend. Okay, so TCC, UNT, Texas Tech, Texas State, just a variety. The top ones our students attend, and we ended up with 7 responses. This was a little more difficult to find the right person. All of the universities stated that they are required to give some sort of exam at the end of a semester. So you'll see that some type of final evaluative exercise is required, but it does not have to be a comprehensive final because we often hear that. You need to take a comprehensive semester exam to prepare you for college. Well, we found that in college, it's not required that it's a comprehensive final exam. The second piece is there a specific weight on the final exam or exercise, and it's not. It's up to teacher discretion. And the third was what is the purpose? And of course, mastery of skills and thinking critically about the subject matter, and are students making appropriate and continuous improvement in learning the skills. The type of test given is teacher choice. Even 1 or 2 universities, you didn't have to give an exam, but you had to be available during that testing time. So that was kind of interesting. So kids could be exempt from it. The final survey that went out was a little harder. I just really wanted to get a sampling of alumni who graduated recently and were attending college or had just graduated. So just pulled from people I knew in the area who had students, sent a survey link out with these 3 questions. And as you can see, it parallels what we have been seeing. Are you required to take comprehensive semester exams? 69% stated they are not required to take a final. From your experience, did high school comprehensive semester exams add value to your learning experience and retention? 88% stated no. And the third one was, do you believe it's better to have a comprehensive semester final exam than a unit exam or project to show learning? 100% of the students chose a unit exam or a project.
Parker, on that, it made a lot of difference the way you just said it. You said
Yes.
69% or said they are required to take a final, and you said they are not required. So which?
I am so sorry. Are not.
Okay. 'Cause
Are
I
not
read
required
that
to take
and
a
I
final.
circled
I'm
it
so
and said-
sorry.
Okay.
What we found was they're required to take a test, but it's not a comprehensive final. Okay, so some sort of final, but it is not comprehensive. It is based on a unit exam, a presentation, a project, a type of final, but not.
So we don't give the teachers a choice. This is a requirement.
Right now, it's a requirement. They do not
They
get a
don't-
choice. No.
So it seems logical that the teachers know their class best, whether they have a choice. Now, if you're given a percentage, you were headed to questions, right? I didn't want to jump.
No, I'm getting to that. You're doing great. I'm ready.
You're right.
All right. So,
What we currently do is
Mm-hmm.
have a district-wide semester exam that is given in the content area.
and we dedicate days to it.
And we dedicate
block
days
it
to
off
that.
and
Typically, you have a week of review and then you have a week of semester exams.
And they're
the-
forced, they're forced that because that's our policy.
That's our policy. They're forced
Okay.
into that.
All
Now,
right.
what we are looking to do, with permission of the board, is to continue with our unit exams, but not have that dead stop at the semester. You have to give this cumulative final exam at this time. We would still have an exam within that 6 weeks period. We have to have 3 major grades. We would continue with the 3 major grades. One of them could be an exam, it could be a presentation, it could be a project. It depends on what the curriculum is doing at that time, but it would address the learning that is occurring. I do want to say that in our curriculum, the major TEKs that have to be covered, and if they're not covered, like in the second 6 weeks, they're spiraled back into the curriculum in either the third 6 weeks, or it may come in the fifth 6 weeks, but they have to be reintroduced so that the students, that information is retaught and they have the
Do
opportunity.
you find that
to-
out today by the common district assessments, or how do you find that out today?
I don't-
How do you find it today, what you have to spiral back in?
From common assessments, the assessments that we were giving. So, yeah. We have an aligned curriculum. We have a comprehensive curriculum plan. And so the ability to remove the semester exam and just do the natural unit exams, projects, presentations are a natural flow to the curriculum.
So how many days of instruction will we save?
We should say okay, so first of all, our first step was the end of the semester in December. Okay, so that has saved us major time. That was downtime because we had those 2 weeks that they would come back and no one started anything new. So that's going to save. With this, we would save that whole week of review for a semester exam and going over, which as a former classroom teacher, probably others in here, it was not always the most valuable learning time. I have not seen it be the most valuable learning time ever.
And in the spring, we have the exemption process now. And what
We
percentage
do.
of
We
our
still have an
students are
exemption
exempt?
process in the spring for our, based on EOCs that are taken or STAR test. If they take one of those, they can be exempt. And for advanced placement, they can be exempt from a semester exam. If we put this in place.
But we also have you don't have to take your final if you're
right,
A or B, right?
right.
And attendance,
Yes.
okay.
And so we still have that for this year. This, if we change anything, it would be for the 22-23 school year.
I'm curious what percentage of kids are already not taking the exam, but are sitting in those rooms going through all the review for an exam that they're not going to take. That was one of the things
It's
we were
usually
gonna
about
get,
50%.
50%?
unless it's a class that's already taken an EOC or a STAR, then it may be
Right.
100%. Yeah. No. So typically, and I'm saying that without, but it's typically, if you go in, it's about anywhere from about a third to 50% are taking the exam.
What is the purpose of requiring a percentage to be allocated to it, or letting the teacher have it or not have it? I mean, a teacher could still, if we change this, they could still elect to have a comprehensive exam, or we'd say, no, you can't do that.
No, we would say no, because it's, the curriculum is set up to be broken into pieces with a unit exam to come at the end, or that exam could be not, your typical multiple choice test, but it could be an essay and presentation both. It could look different for each one. With a semester exam coming at a dead stop, you typically, I'm going to use English teachers, will typically give an essay, but they'll give it a couple of weeks early. Then they'll get that graded, and then there'll be a 50 or 100 question multiple test.
So
that can go
You
through a
would
schedule.
eliminate the change in schedule. Those final days are
Right.
a modified schedule, and so everybody have to do it or nobody could do it.
Right.
You
To
want
Mr.
an
Newcomb's-
extended testing period.
To Mr. Newcomb's point, I think a lot of it has to do with what you're teaching. So I
Right.
taught German, AP Psychology, and Sociology. Sociology, the semester exam was relatively irrelevant. I didn't necessarily build content every time and add content to that.
Right.
For AP Psychology, since you're taking an AP course, I always, talking about spiraling curriculum, I always brought things back every time because I knew that in March or April, you were going to take an exam. So by the end, you were seeing all kinds of things on that exam going into it. But German, I didn't have to because naturally it builds on itself.
Builds on it.
So you didn't really have to artificially say, now we're going to know how to do to be. I mean, you better know how because we're going to have sentences with it in it.
Right.
So, and so I think it really depends on the exam, and then some, you said project-based. And so
Right.
some of your AP coursework, particularly in the second semester, becomes frustrating. You've already taken your AP exam, and now we're going to give you a semester exam. And that's where a lot have wanted to go to the project-based. In the,
Well, and
in
it's the
6
development
weeks.
of the critical thinking, the collaboration, the key skills that can go. You've already taken an exam either through AP or your EOCs, and so you have an opportunity with the curriculum. You have more leniency and more relevancy with it. So,
Do you mind
no, go
me
ahead.
saying so? So to address your question, you made the comment, so will teachers still have the option to be able? Yes. That I believe what I hear you saying is we need the ownership of the assessments to be in the teacher's hands as a professional learning community. We hire them as professionals. They are trained. They know their students. They also know where they are with the curriculum. So therefore, even though we have a comprehensive assessment plan, the teachers in their grade levels, in their groups, come together in their PLCs and determine when tests shall be. What this is you're taking away the stop in a schedule to take an exam. You're now giving the ownership back to the individuals that are professionals and make the best decisions for our students concerning assessments. So anytime we take DCAs, we gather that feedback, and we are through teacher feedback and through teachers collaboration, then make the decisions of then what do we need to do at that next exam. And so when you're asking if teachers would have that ability to do so, absolutely, because they would now be given the authority to assess the students on what is best and where they are at that time period, and also when they want to assess. So it could be on this Monday, or it could be on that Thursday. So basically what you're doing is you're just taking away that dead stop time.
The rigidity of a
The
semester
rigidity of it.
exam
Mhm.
schedule.
Yeah, I think, don't misunderstand me. I don't think the exams are adding anything just from all the research you've given. I would hope our teachers have the ability to do exactly what you're saying and to allocate whatever percentage they want to
Yes,
that
sir.
exam.
And
Instead of
that
saying it
was-
has to be 1/7 or whatever, then
Yes,
maybe
sir.
it should be half. Because when they go to college, they're gonna have professors, they don't have to follow a rigid schedule like we've got them set up. They're gonna go in and say, this paper's worth 20%, this exam's
Yes,
worth 10%, this is worth 30%. And if we're telling them what percentage to
But
do,
we
then that's
do
not
tell
helping.
them already in our grading guidelines.
Yeah,
We
I
have
heard you
3
say that.
major grades that have to count 60% and then minor grades that have to count 40%. So there is.
Why do we do that?
Our
Unless
gap-
it's-
But when we
there are
say that,
standards.
that's a minimum
That's a
number of
minimum.
grades. Teachers can decide to have more.
Unless
They-
it's AP and then it's 70%.
Right,
major.
and unless it's AP. So we have certain standards because what we receive at one high school should be comparable to what is happening at another. So we have to have a certain standard that we don't give total permission. You can count.
That's what they're
this
gonna
as-
face in college if we're trying to get them ready for college.
Right,
Is all kind of different grading
right,
procedures and allocations to different
Right.
things. So, and maybe our teachers like that, maybe that's good, but I wouldn't like it if I was a teacher. You telling me exactly how much I have to allocate to a particular test or a particular
But-
section?
I don't know. I think we've been doing that. I don't remember when we weren't doing it necessarily in our larger districts where we've got multiple teachers, multiple, we've been doing that.
Right,
Did it
and
as
part
a
of it's
grading policy.
consistency.
And the
to do with
consistency
ranking
and the
as well.
standard, yes.
I mean,
Yeah, I understand the ranking
Yeah.
part of it, but still.
Mhm.
I think it doesn't feel like there's a lot of flexibility as much as there probably is because you're talking about each major exam essentially in the 60% model counts as 20% of your overall grade. It's still
Unless you
pretty-
choose to get more.
Unless you choose to
Yeah,
get
you
more.
can-
You
which
could get
people
more.
do. So they have kind of a consistent flexibility
Yeah.
there.
So they could give them 6 or 10% each. if they-
Yes, you
okay.
could.
I mean, for my own kids, I've seen both. Rarely is it just 3 grades for a major. A lot of times it's 4.
Mhm.
You know, maybe a project and
Yeah.
three tests. It just depends on what the class is. But there's
So there
flexibility.
is flexibility within our system, but there is also standards that we've set to ensure consistency and ensure that the validity of the content being taught that's been prepared.
So in a college, they could have one that's just based on one test.
Oh, yeah.
Entire grade.
I've seen it.
We don't allow that.
We do not, we do
Ours
not.
would prevent that.
We're working to prepare them, we're not college yet. Working to
As a
prepare.
class this semester, there are 3 tests. That's it.
That's it,
Yeah.
No
yeah,
other grades.
right.
The grading.
I guess you know by the first test if that doesn't go.
We also
But
have
drop
the
day is
option-
today,
That's
so-
right. You pray that test comes before the drop day.
Yeah. We do
Drop
have
today.
pass fail, but we don't really have the option to drop English.
Yeah, to drop.
Unless you're on a 5-year plan, so there's some differences. So,
Crazy.
this is where we are, so, we'll continue with our work and I'll update you. This isn't part of board policy, but it is part of our, guidelines, our regulations and everything, so. Feel free to reach out if you have other questions or if you want to see what our unit exams look like.
With the goal of having it in place
For
20 to 23.
To 23.
Okay.
We would continue with our current practice from here and throughout the year.
And we did make a determination because of COVID this spring, just a couple of weeks
Yes.
ago, that although the grading requirements are in there for the exemptions, we took the absences off because beyond their control in many cases, especially for quarantines.
We went back to last year where it was, if you have an 85 or above, you are eligible to be exempt from the final semester grade, regardless of if you took an AP test or EOC. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, our next report is on Link, and Dr. Arnold is going to share with us all about Link. We have to get up and move around for this, or if it goes over so many minutes, we have to go outside, or?
You have to have a 15-minute break.
Okay.
When the alarm goes off.
Actually, it is a joy to present our Link update, and I wanted to start by introducing Candace Williams-Martin. And she is our Link specialist. She's done an exemplary job leading our Link program since 2015 when it started. I just wanted to express that appreciation to her. And I feel very blessed that I get to work hand in hand with her because I first met her back, many, many years ago when she was my granddaughter's kindergarten teacher. So we're joined at the heart level, I guess you would say. So the mission of Link is to bridge the gap between academics and social, emotional, and healthy well-being. The LINK project aims to develop the whole child through increased recess and character development. And it formally launched in Eagle Mountain in the fall of 2015 at Eagle Mountain Elementary in grades kindergarten and first grade. And most of you know that it was developed by Dr. Debbie Ray, who is a full professor in kinesiology and the Associate Dean of Research and Health Sciences at Texas Christian University. And I've provided a video there if you'd like to learn more about Dr. Ray and how the program developed. I know that some of you have been on the board for a long time, and so you kind of know the history, and then some of you maybe you do not. And also there is our LINK video that was filmed at Greenfield Elementary in the fall. And so if you haven't watched that, it really is a delightful representation of what LINK means to our teachers and to our children.
And aren't you going to show it today? Are we going to show it?
Would you like me to show it?
4 minutes. That's good. Surprise, Kirk, we're showing a video. So
I'm going to show it then, if I can get it to do it.
Yeah, so make sure the audio's
It's
on.
like recess.
Yes.
It's like getting to watch a frame break.
Oh, it's not doing
Maybe
it.
not.
Let's see, maybe it will now.
And if not, we can send it to you, although it looks like.
There it is, right here. It's a link. Yeah.
Let's see if we can make noise.
Kirk will fix it.
So the voice on the thing.
Good morning, guys. The LINK program has been a game changer. Greenfield Elementary is happier, calmer place.
May not be
because of
synced
less
there.
things.
It's up. We probably sync it up.
That's okay.
We could stand up and take a brain break right now.
Does Kirk know? Yeah, I think this would be a quick fix for him.
No, it worked.
We'll just sync it up. We'll go.
Quality over quantity.
There we go.
Who remembers what creative means? Everybody.
Make something new.
Their engagement with me and my lessons are much better because they know I'm going to give a lesson, they're going to work, oh, but we get to go out and play. And it's the most important thing for them on their minds all day
Take it back
long.
to the beginning.
I like school a lot because there's recess. I'm out running and I'm not focusing on what's making me stressed. I'm out playing with my friends. And then I get back on.
Apologize, we are all going to be on the break from 1:06, so.
Good morning, guys. The LINK program has been a game changer. Greenfield Elementary is happier, a calmer place because of LINK. We love it.
Our students know that they're going to get these brain breaks. When they start getting anxious or anything, they know they're going to get that opportunity to get up and move.
The more they move, the better their brain functions. If their brain is functioning the way it should, then they're able to be successful in school. It's 4 15-minute unstructured play breaks a day and a character development curriculum that's every day for 15 minutes that's based on something called positive action.
Eat right, eat healthy. Harper, what's another one? Wash your hands.
LINK allows the teachers to teach at a deeper level with a higher understanding. It's more about quality over quantity.
Who remembers what creative means? Everybody.
Make something new.
Their engagement with me and my lessons are much better because they know I'm going to give a lesson, they're going to work, oh, but we get to go out and play. And it's the most important thing for them on their minds all day long.
I like school a lot because there's recess. I'm out running and I'm not focusing on what's making me stressed. I'm out playing with my friends. And then I get back into class, I'm not stressed anymore. I'm ready to figure it out.
They can self-regulate, and then there's not as many discipline problems in the classroom.
Recess or unstructured play is not just free time, it's purposeful free time. We have to have time to be able to disconnect from whatever the work is in order to reset ourselves in order to be creative, and that will have a direct impact on critical thinking.
When kids have these link breaks, they're much more focused, they're happier, they definitely learn better.
When we look at Maurice the mouse in the mirror over here, what do we say?
We really try to teach them that if you think positive, talk positive, your actions will be positive. The lack of structure on the playground has really sparked their creativity and their imagination. They are playing like kids and they are interacting with each other.
You see kids able to very quickly move from that environment and within minutes are back in the classroom learning. That's a critical piece for Link.
The transition that we do is a secret sauce. If you do it right, it is an amazing transformation. They'll come down the hallway quietly. They know that they're going to recess. They get outside and then they can scream and yell and do whatever they want. When the whistle blows, they come back in quietly again, go back to class, and within about a minute's time, they're back on focus in the classroom on whatever it was they were doing before they left.
This is how we do school in Seguin. Link creates the conditions necessary for learning to happen. We have increased outside unstructured play time within the school day, and we have not had any decrease in academic gains. But we have had increase in social emotional outcomes, happiness and self-regulation and resiliency.
Socially, the kids are much better at working out problems and getting along with one another. Emotionally, they're happy, settled, less anxious, and with cognitive, they are able to focus throughout the day. And for physical, they're very agile, coordinated, and their body fat levels are more in a healthy range.
I know it works because I see kids smiling. We have hundreds of years of documented research that will tell you that play is important and that nature is important.
Play is where you learn how to be a good citizen, how to take turns, how to use your creativity, and you'll use it the rest of your life.
To be able to know what your body is telling you and know where to seek relief from stress and from anxiety in a safe and healthy way, I mean, that's powerful. That's changed the world big.
It's all about, what can we do for kids to really bring back the wholeness of the child?
And that's important to create healthy, happy, resilient children.
And when I look good and feel good, I will have a positive day at school.
Here we go. So that's really fun to watch, and it really gives you a picture of exactly what it looks like during recess time. So since that time in 2015, each year Link has been added to another grade level or campus. And so you have the timeline that shows you here that it will be fully implemented on all of our elementary campuses this August. In the last 2 years, we've all journeyed through what we would call the effect of COVID on our students. And as a continuous improvement district, we are always looking at how can we be more responsive to the needs of our students and to our families. And we know they struggled academically, and we knew they were struggling socially and emotionally. So this year, we administered what's called the Sel Web Assessment. And it shows you here the areas that are measured. It actually looks at the social emotional competencies. And on this next slide, you actually see the results for the district. So across all of our elementary campuses, the #1 need was the same thing. And that was social perspective taking, which is understanding the thoughts and intentions of others, which is a pretty big thing to understand. So we're very blessed though, because through the Link program, we have the positive action curriculum. And through that curriculum, we were able to look at that curriculum and see how does it line up with the competencies that our students were struggling with. And so this is just kind of just a brief look at some of the units that are included in positive action and how it directly connects to the Sel Web Assessment that we gave, and how our teachers, as they teach the positive action curriculum, and our counselors can directly impact those areas where our students are struggling the most. And just a slide here, just to give you a little bit more information about positive action, about the curriculum and the research there. In addition to COVID having an impact on our students academically and social and emotionally, we also were blessed from the state with what's called House Bill 4545, which says that for every area in which a student does not approach the grade level standard on STAR, they will actually have to have 30 hours of tutoring in each subject area. And so you ask yourself, where do you find 30 hours of tutoring in every subject area? And some of the students do have tutoring after school, but it's very difficult for some students to stay after school and have that many hours. And so you look for times in the school day when you can provide that intervention. So in order to protect our Tier 1 instruction, because that is where all of our foundational curriculum is presented in math and English language arts and in science, we knew we had to find a way to get more instructional minutes. So we met with Dr. Ray and we worked out a way to recapture some minutes by making some change to our link minutes. And the updated changes are on the slide that you see here. And you can see, for example, in kindergarten through second grade, they went from 60 minutes of play to 45 minutes of play. And those recaptured minutes now are part of an intervention block that each grade level has so that students can receive the intervention that they need during the school day without it negatively impacting our Tier 1 instruction. And so that's been very helpful. And then in addition to that, we've taken a deeper look at the Sel Web Assessment, and we're meeting with Dr. Ray to see how can we bring in more aspects of the positive action curriculum to maybe make an even bigger impact with our students. There's some training that our counselors will go through, and hopefully there will be even a family piece to that. So that's the next step that we hope to take to be able to help our students in this area.
So when you looked at the Sel Web Assessment by campus, did you see improvements on the campuses that have links as compared to those that don't have a link program yet? I mean, that's what we'd expect, right?
Right. Well, that assessment we actually did in the fall, and then we'll do a follow-up assessment at the end of this year. So that really was just the kind of the beginning measuring.
But you think there would be a
all of
stronger
our
for the campuses that
they don't all have it through the
at every grade level.
Okay.
So all of our campuses, 2 years ago, we implemented Link, but our.
So for fifth grade, say.
For fifth grade.
Did you see it in fifth grade, different on the campuses that had link than that didn't? It'd be an interesting data point to look at.
It would be, but it was overwhelmingly the same across all campuses and grade levels. That social perspective taking was the area where they were struggling the most.
This was the first time that we gave this assessment.
Right.
Was this current school year. And so we just developed that baseline, and then we'll come back.
No, but you see what she's getting at. She's asking, is it the difference between those who have positive action and those who don't? And you know what, I don't remember if it was divided by grade level or it was divided by school only. It was, so we can go back and look at it. I'll put it in an update for you.
It would be nice to
that'd be
see,
interesting.
like, with graders in Eagle Mountain Elementary, if their numbers look different.
If they were higher than
Yes.
our fifth graders at
Yes.
a school that didn't. We'll pull that. I'll put it in an
that'd be
update for you if that's okay.
Interesting information.
Yeah.
It's a great question, because we actually have 4 of our elementary campuses that have linked through 3rd grade. So we could look at the results of their 4th and 5th grade students and see how that measured up. Definitely.
These have been, some of them have been doing it since 2015. So I don't know that I've seen one. So do we have something that shows the scores at these schools from one year to the next that shows that, you know, Eagle Mountain scores, they've been doing it now for 7 years. So are their scores going up every year? Are they staying the same? Or are they going down?
I can help answer that. We were doing well. The data was not it was not showing a negative impact. I think it even said that in the film on the scores. Now COVID hit, and so it's been a whole different ballgame for 2 years. But their time on task behavior was higher. So we weren't seeing it in our STAR scores that hadn't, I'm trying to think, because they started in 2015 with kinder and first. We're seeing it wasn't negatively impacting, because we were comparing Lake Point and Eagle Mountain, and it wasn't negatively impacting their scores, but their time on task behavior when that was at a higher level.
If we're investing that much time, though, and money, you would think that it would be better than just not seeing a negative
Right.
value. You'd think we'd be seeing an improvement. I mean, I think.
Yes, and I'm because in 2019 we hit COVID, we didn't take assessments in that. So I'm thinking kindergarten first, and those we've had a group who are now in 6th grade, right? Okay.
Yeah, the time on task, when it was measured, increased by 40% on the link campuses as opposed to the control campuses. And then there's some data that's on the TCU link website, but it's not very specific as to the year or the grade levels that were impacted.
I noticed in the video, you see some kids playing on playground equipment, and you see them playing with the rope and one, and you see a few things, but what I hear from the teachers in the district is that they're not allowed to use equipment during the link recesses.
And that actually, during this semester, we actually did make a change to that, so that for their 2 unstructured recesses that they have a day, one of those is unstructured without equipment, and then the other one, they're actually able to bring equipment in.
If you're letting kids go out and play in recess, why? I mean, it's recess. I mean, I think that's the biggest negative I hear from the teachers and the parents that get involved. Why not let them play with whatever they want to play with? It's recess,
One of the things that we saw that was different since COVID was that some of our students that had participated in like after-school sports and were a part of sports teams and had that opportunity to play with that equipment, over the last couple of years, that's diminished. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to add that back in was to give them that opportunity to have that team play and to have that experience.
Another question that teachers have asked me at several different campuses, are they very structured on the exact times that they can go out and have for example, they're right in the middle of a math lesson, or they're right in the middle of a language arts deal, and they need 5 or 10 more minutes or whatever to complete that academic part of the lesson, which to them would give them the most benefit, the kid, the student, but yet they are required by link protocol that they have to stop right there at 20 after, and they go regardless of where they are in the lesson. Is that correct?
Yeah, the timer goes off, and when there were the 4 unstructured breaks during the day, that did make it difficult because sometimes some content goes longer than 45 minutes and a teacher might need longer. And so with this adjustment, and there's just the 2 unstructured breaks, then the campuses now have, and the grade levels can now put a 3rd break in, and they can put it in the curriculum where it best fits each day. For example, if they need a longer period of time to do a science lab, then they're able to do that and make that adjustment. So that was something we wanted the teachers to have, that freedom to do that flexibility.
I don't know if that's something that can be looked at, but I know that I don't know that the people, they're not the ones in the video, obviously, but there's a lot of people out there, employees that are not fans of Link, that do not like the strictness of it and the demands that it puts on their academic time. That I think they all agree that recess for the kids does give them a break, clears their mind, and lets them kind of get everything out of their system, then when they come back in, they do have a better shot at having better lessons and better academic settings in the classrooms. But, you know, the stringency of it, I think, seems to be a negative on what I'm told.
Let me brag on this team of Dana and Dr. Arnold. They met with Dr. Ray and went through the concerns that we had, and we've changed and adjusted to meet the needs, not just of House Bill 45, but of what you're saying specifically. And so that's why you're seeing, you know, by state, we have to have 2 15-minute recesses a day. So we're meeting the needs, but we've got some flexibility in here with those dead stops and that time. There's some things that we have to do because I can't have 658 kids at the playground at the same time. So we have to, you know, we have to have timelines where kids can be at different playgrounds at different times. But these ladies have worked with Dr. Ray for the program to keep the very things you were talking about that we value, and to be consistent with our program as well.
And one last thing, that the teachers are not allowed to use link as a disciplinary measure, you know, a consequence for a child's behavior. You know, I don't know much about it, but I know whenever I was messing up, you take away what I like the best, that gets my attention. And if these recess breaks are what kids like the best, and as many problems as we're having in this day and age with discipline in our schools, I guess I don't understand why you can't take recess away from them.
It's in our policy.
They actually do still have recess, but they do make an adjustment to what that student can do during the recess time. That does happen. So there is some consequence to it.
We passed a policy on that.
We have to allow children 2 15-minute breaks per day. We can limit their access to playing with a group, or, you know, but you still must give children recess.
Okay. They can play alone during that time as opposed to being with a group.
Yeah.
So you can do that.
You can't keep them in the classroom.
You can't make them go sit by themselves outside somewhere.
You can make them be away from the kids, yeah.
You can make them walk by themselves, like walk during that time.
But we don't do that in our link program.
Yes.
We do.
We do?
Yes.
Okay.
We said that from the get-go. You can.
If that's the feedback that you are receiving, then we can make sure that we address that and make sure that people understand what's allowed to be done.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Just go back and touch base with all of our principals.
Yeah.
Thank you.
President Newcomb, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Tolbert.
So Candace Martin-Williams, Link Specialist. So what is her role, and how does that impact the Link program at Eagle Mountain? That'd be interested to know.
I work, I am the middleman, you might want to say, between TCU's Link program and EMS ISD's leadership. So it's very much a collaborative effort between the two. We meet as the Link leadership. We discuss the needs on our campuses. Training, what supplies they need, where they're needing support. And then we go back and we meet with the EMS leadership and have those discussions to see, just like in these situations where we are seeing there's some things that needed to be tweaked in House Bill 4545, what we need to do on both sides to bring it together.
I have a couple of questions. So in 2015, how was the decision made, and who made it to not use athletic equipment, or, you know, is that the right word? Sporting or athletic equipment?
I can
From
address
what
that.
I researched, I don't think that's really a Link thing. From what I can see back, I looked at videos and there were balls and things being used.
Sure.
And I see both sides of it. I really do. I think it's good to have sometimes, maybe sometimes not. But how was that decision made?
So I'm going to back up a little bit to prior to 2015. Dr. Ray approached us from TCU to talk about the Link program based on her work in Finland. The Commissioner of Education there, his name is Pasi Sahlberg. And Dr. Sahlberg led this movement in that area for unstructured play. Finland at the time, and still does, has some of the highest academic performance in all of Europe. And they actually go to school less often and have more time. And no matter what the weather is outside, they go outside. And very, very cold. Of course, Finland's cold. They go out. And so she was talking about the research they were doing, and specifically in the area of social emotional learning. At the time, they didn't say SEL a lot. It was they said things like student behavior, time on task, more terms that we've been using for a long time. SEL really is something that's come lately in terms of what we discussed. And so at the time, we went and took a group. I asked for volunteers from the district, and Eagle Mountain Elementary stepped up and said, we'd like to look at it. And I took a group of kindergarten and first grade teachers to another school district, actually a school, it's a private school. And so we went to go to that school, and we did some walkthroughs and talking to teachers, and we came through and we debriefed. And the question was this, is, are you interested in doing it? The answer could have been no. If the answer was no, I'd go on to school number 2 to see if there was anybody interested in doing this as a pilot. And so they're 100%, we want to do that. And so we started with that school, and many of those same teachers are there. Ms. Williams-Martin was a kindergarten teacher at the time. And so we, first grade, second, sorry about that. Okay, I can remember, pardon me. And so we started the process with that, and we decided at that time we wanted to do a pilot. We did. All of our numbers in terms of student behavior, increased time on task, creativity, critical thinking skills. They go in, we didn't make this an academic presentation, but they go in and actually have analysts that go in and mark every bit of a behavior, code it down. They measure things now, what used to be BMI, there's another calculation. BIA, which actually measures essentially kids, not their weight, but actually their body mass index, and BIA, I forget what it stands for. But thank you, bioimpedance scale, that's right, okay. And so what that does is actually see how if kids are healthier. And so what they've noticed is that kids that are in the program, essentially because they're getting more physical exercise, actually have better BMI than other kids. And so they were studying all that. So we rolled it out at that time. And so one of the things early on, there's never a rule, and you're right, it's not a link thing not to have any type of equipment, but it kind of evolved in that. And now we're correcting it to give more of a balance, because part of what happens is if you can watch it on any playground that has, let's say, a basketball hoop. There's one basketball and there's a kid, and there's a few kids that play basketball, and there's a lot of kids that run around, a lot of kids play basketball. Same thing with soccer. I'm a soccer guy, and you have a lot of kids running around watching soccer. I think of my daughter, young ages, I don't think she ever touched the ball. I think there was like a magnet between her and the ball. She never got farther, she never got closer. She just kind of ran around it. You have a lot of that. So what you have happen instead, and I'll use an example that we found at Eagle Mountain Elementary, you have kids digging in the dirt looking for dinosaur bones. We never broke it to them that there's no dinosaur bones, but then they would come in and they'd tell stories about it. They would do all these things. And what we saw was the critical thinking happening on the playground came right into the classroom. And so that's the balance of it. I think there's a balance. I don't think you go one way or the other. I think you should have games. But what's fun too sometimes is just making up games. And I just invite y'all, we can bring y'all out to one of our playgrounds. And it sounds simple. Okay, yeah, I've seen kids play. But when you start listening to them, they are talking at such high levels. They're they're creating games and ideas. And then the key part is, and this is what this is about, and I don't know if we've really talked about this enough, is that this meeting, for example, we've been in here for an hour and 10 minutes, and there'll be a point in time where your mind can't take in that much more. And you kind of struggle through it when we're adults. And we're really good at faking it, right? We're good because we're adults. We made it here. We're going to keep making it. Kids aren't, right? Especially the younger they are. And so they start getting disengaged. And so probably what they do is they literally measure eye movement in kids and measure if these kids have better concentration skills. And what they found is they could teach content. Typically, when do you teach math? Morning, right? First thing. They found that there was very little difference of teaching math in the morning versus the afternoon. Because kids, it wasn't they can't learn math in the afternoon, it's they can't do things that long without deep, having this unstructured time. And so the whole point was for them to have complete unstructured time during those 15 minutes and to be able to have breaks and come back in. And what we found is that kids were able to refocus on learning. And this is something that just doesn't happen that often. You'd follow kids in, and within a minute, the kids are re-engaged. So what happens usually if you have one recess is they're spending time before the recess talking about recess, right? Recess is coming, recess is coming. They have recess, and then they spend the time afterwards going, oh man, I wish we had recess, and they're exhausted, versus having it broken up. So that's where it came from. And we then expanded it. Actually, Dr. Arnold's school was the control school, okay? No one wants to be the control school, but y'all were. And so we did measurement examples and those things between the two schools. We did see some differences. Academics, not as much, although the prime reason for this was never academics. It was more about, again, what we call now SEL, social emotional. So does that answer your question? I kind of went more detail.
I guess somebody had to make that decision.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Was it you?
Yeah, no. I made it. It was on December. No kidding. I think what happened is that they really dissuaded people from using playground equipment because you can, or not equipment, but toys or balls or whatever. Because again, and I'll use a soccer example. Okay, you talk about what you know. When I see a soccer practice, especially with young kids, and I see 12 kids, guess what I want to see? 12 soccer balls. Because if you have one soccer ball, you have 12 kids and one kid has the ball, maybe two, number three. You really want more. And so I don't think it's just an equipment issue, but it really has to do with making sure kids engage with something and they do with something. And so I think we've probably moved too far about getting 100% away from equipment, which I think we need to balance that. So, because it's not about not letting them play with games. You just don't want them to go stand and not be a part of something. And also, there's not enough playground equipment. If we take away all the toy and the balls and all that stuff, there's not a swing for every kid. There's not a slide for every kid. There has to be other things that they have to do. But
Dr. Chadwell,
yes.
I mean, I was part of the initial pilot, the very, like before yeah. And the reason was to try to have the kids engage with each other and get along, learn to get along and make their own games and be inventive and be creative and start negotiating rather than, I'm gonna use your example. This guy's got the ball and everybody else is trying to get the ball from him, and it becomes a, give and take, which is part of sports, but it's more about learning to negotiate, work together, be critical thinkers.
So here's an example, and please elaborate, Dr. Tolbert, because y'all probably did the same thing. So the teachers play an active role, but when you look at them, they don't look as active as a normal playground because they stand on the perimeter. The kid comes in and says, so-and-so, unless it's something violent, and they tell them, so-and-so won't let me play, they'll say, so what are your options of what you can do about that? It's reflected back to them to solve their own problems versus, what would happen in my house? Give them the ball, and just move on. You really don't want to try to solve all their problems. Now, again, if it crosses the line, you get involved, but teachers have to be out there. Teachers don't have duty during that time period. They're not, in fact, not allowed to do other work. And part of it is not because we just want them out there observing. We could observe with fewer people, but we actually want them taking that break for themselves, especially at the elementary level. You don't always get that sustained period of time you have at the high school or middle school level. So we want them out there, and that does not count as a conference period. That's their,
I think you had several questions. The first question to answer was Dr. Chadwell.
Yes.
Okay.
A question and a comment. I agree with pretty much what Mr. Daughtry said. I've talked to a lot of, probably that's the thing that I get asked the most. Why do we not have equipment at recess? A lot of coaches, probably every coach and 10 or so PE teachers to a person, every one of them thought it was ridiculous that we didn't have those. So those are people dealing with it every day. My question is, as a parent of a third grader, sure looks like they got the short end of the shaft here. What happened? Did we have a bigger gap in third grade that their recess got cut in half? Went from 60 minutes to 30. Was third grade worse gap wise? Is that what happened here?
Still 45.
Yes.
It hated third grade?
Still 45. Well, but we're preparing them. And the instructional minutes, they start preparing for the state accountability test required by the state in third grade.
That's when it starts. Okay.
And that's when they start. And
my son Lucas would like to object to that bill.
we have addresses. You can send his objection.
Right,
and the principals, they also do have the flexibility with the grade level teachers. If the kids need a third break during the day, to add that in wherever it fits into the curriculum for that day.
I was told that was K through 2. Is that not accurate? I was told that today, that third and above cannot add a 15 minutes.
It's K through 2 formally, but we went back in conversations with the principals because some of the teachers did say that we would like to have the option to be able to add that flexibility in For example, some days maybe it's needed, other days it's not. And so we said, yes, if you need to add that in, because they're making that transition, you know, from the 60 minutes. It helps to do that in smaller steps. And so that flexibility is there.
Could we please read it or make sure that they know that? Because the one I talked to today that said that was not the case. So.
Yes, I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
Well, I think it goes back to what Steve was saying, even about the exams. I mean, I think we need to have the teachers are professionals. They know when their kids are going to start squirming. Dr. Chadwell can see when I start moving my chair, you know, that they need a break. So they can make those professional and educated decisions.
It does sound like there's been several things that might be, there's some confusion around, so maybe just a refresher on what our rules are across the board might make sense.
Especially with the change that's come. We'll work on that.
And we're really kind of piloting this change and then getting the teachers and the principals' response so that we know where to go, you know, from here, but we can definitely clarify all of that.
So the updated is just what the state requires, 30 minutes. We're back, I mean, that's what we are.
But there's
There's
some
a different way to do, we're
flexibility
doing
to
it, but it's
Yeah.
now, that's the minimum. We can't cut the 15.
Can't cut it down.
So it's 30 minutes.
It's 30 minutes with the there's a 15-minute flex period in there. Yes.
Also, they mentioned in the video, positive action curriculum. That's something that's not required with the state, and that's your character ed program, and it integrates. So if there's conflict on the playground, that's something we would want to work out within the class. So
The
that,
character ed program is required by the state. We have to have a character ed program. That's why we have Lions Quest and we have positive action.
apologize. Yeah.
But it's not
Not
required exactly how we do it, but we
Not
do
as
have our
thorough.
standard.
We rolled it in
So-
the link, but it's
So
required.
what is different than now, their link versus what we would be, how we've modified link to what we would have to do anyway?
The big difference is that they're talking about the character ed. The character ed is not a 15-minute curriculum. It's,
Every day.
you have to do
It's every
character
day.
ed. It's fairly vague in what you have to do. This is actually a orchestrated, regimented, research-based curriculum that starts from K all the way up and then goes into our Lions Quest.
And it's now available on all of the elementary campuses.
The other part of it is a lot of the things is training people to fly. I'm going to give you an example when my kids got here. Okay. If it was 45 degrees, 50 degrees, there are some people that would never let the kids out of the building. It's just too cold. Okay. And there are other people, no problem. So it was all over the place. And we had some people that didn't want the 30 minutes and would find a way to carve off. And for example, you can get 30 minutes down to 20 minutes really easy if you transition 5 minutes both ways. So you only have 30 minutes then. And so part of this is like, for example, lining everybody up, what you saw. One thing you didn't see is that in Link, you're not supposed to wait until it's perfect line, everybody, you know, dovetails, bubble in the mouth, and then leave. You're supposed to start moving as long as generally the line's together. You're supposed to move. That buys back a minute of transition time every recess, or brain break or whatever. And so those things are part of Link, and that's why the training, you can get it so much more efficient just by people consciously running it in that way. And Dr. Tolbert, I know you did this every day, so I don't.
Yes, I mean, well, what we found when we were piloting it for Dr. Ray, because I was at TCU at the lab schools there, and we found that, you know, the kids were the ones that figured it out quickly. They would like, okay, we got to go, we're having brain break. Then when they got back, they needed to go to the restroom, they needed to get a drink of water. And so we said, you have to take care of everything during your brain break. Well, they didn't have to go to the restroom quite so much, and they didn't have to have drinks of water quite so much, because they had to all be, that all had to be enveloped in that 15 minutes, you know.
Right.
And so, yeah, and I will tell you, my teachers were very skeptical. They were very skeptical. But they said, we'll try it. We're on the campus. Dr. Ray, good colleague. Of course, we'll do it for you. Let's see. And we were pleased. We had issues with balls and equipment and all that. We went back and forth with that too. I mean, those are just kind of things that happen. But as you said, now you're tweaking it and looking at what you need to do. And
So how does that keep us associated with Link if we tweak what their program is recommending? Does that take us out of their study because now we're not doing it that way, or?
No, it does not. And that's really why we met with Dr. Ray and just walked through each piece of this with her. And she realized we need to be responsive to the needs really of our students and our families. And so she was willing to to make that adjustment so we could gain back some instructional minutes. And then I think the positive action curriculum too, I think that she's hoping that she's going to be able to make a deeper impact with our students' SEL through that curriculum, even without those 4 unstructured recesses.
And the curriculum is connected to link to that
Positive action.
positive action.
It is. And
Is
it
she
lines
right?
up with
No,
our.
It's based from the 70s and 80s, I believe. And at some point, we won't call it link anymore.
Yes.
And so this started as a research model. At some point, we won't use that term, not because we change things, but because it's just, we own it. And so this is what we're in the process of owning it now. So we start, when you do a research model, and I know y'all are aware of this, but you have to, the one thing you have to control for is variability. So if you have variability, everybody does something different, then you don't really have a research study. And so now a lot of that study and that work is done, completed. And now we can move into our own plan.
That's kind of what I was headed to.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dr. Arnold, do we get feedback from the teachers, do a survey, and then give them the information on data improvements or what, the information that you're collecting from the academic end, but also take in consideration, from the survey, their thoughts on things? Because it sounds like they're talking to everyone, and maybe if we just had a collection of that, I'm not saying you don't have it, but I think that would probably be most helpful.
And when we started this process, we actually started by providing a survey and questions to the principals to sit down and share with all of their teachers. And then they provided feedback, and we put all of their feedback on a spreadsheet. And that's really how we came up with the change in the program, was by listening to what their concerns were. And they really wanted that flexibility to be able to not be tied to the 4 times a day, because sometimes you need a much longer period of time. For example, if you're teaching a writing lesson and the alarm would go off and kids would run out the door, and then you have to bring them back in and be able to reset them for that. So that was one of the concerns that they shared. And the other main concern was the fact that they didn't have any play equipment. And so that's why we made also that adjustment to that. But that was all based on teacher feedback and input. And so as we walk through this, we'll go back and continue to talk to them and see how the changes are meeting the needs of the students.
Is the 15-minute optional recess, is play equipment allowed for that, or is that based on the discretion of the teacher?
That is, they are allowed to use play equipment for that also, yes.
Because that might be a decent disciplinary thing, like you said, or you better be good or we're not going to have equipment.
Yeah.
Do we hope to go back someday to this? It all may depend on the House bill, but would we love to go back to the original 4 15-minute recesses someday, or if we can or not?
It depends. I don't have a magic ball, but if I did, I would hope we would be able to go back to change some things. But with the state currently, the pressure they're putting on us, not necessarily. I will tell you, I did get some data comparing, thank you, FX, Dozier to Eagle Mountain Elementary, and on the SEL, and the campus with Link had higher scores in overall SEL in pardon me, understanding others was significantly higher, sometimes 3%, sometimes 9%.
I mean, that would make sense. That's what you would hope for.
Yeah, and that's what we'd hope for, but I'll send that to you. So that's good. I appreciate you, Beth, getting that quickly, because I want you to leave here knowing it's good. And TCU paid for that study for us, so that was kind of nice.
I think one thing, Mr. Bose, is that we're in the middle of kids catching up on the gaps they had. We'll assess that through obviously the students' academic performance. So I think there'll be a time in the future in which we feel like we're renormed there, but I think it could be a number of years. I mean, the gaps that some students have are so significant during that time, but we'll keep looking at it. I think the input from our staff is really important because it's supposed to be a win-win for everybody. I mean, that's the goal.
I guess we've already answered these things.
Just we'd already skipped to that slide, so you're good.
Whether she was there or not.
I'll ask one more time. Any more questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Arnold. We appreciate
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your report and your efforts on that. And since, now we're not going to take a 15-minute recess. But before we go, it's the end of the reports. So before we go into action items, look up at the clock. It's 8:25. Let's be back by 8:30. We'll take a break to this. All right, good job, group. It's 8:30. Let's see if we can all get focused in 1 minute. Refocus. All right, we're moving to action items, and the first is to approve the 2020-2021 financial audit report. We had a report on that earlier.
The 2020-2021 financial audit report.
Second.
Motion by Donna and second by Liz. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. All right, next action item is, at this time, on behalf of Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, I declare an open meeting to discuss the district's Esser SUP use of funds plan and return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. So this will be a public hearing. Mr. Welch will give the report, and then we'll ask anybody that wishes to speak to it to step forward. Mr. Welch.
All right, thank you, trustees. Again, this is a public meeting, and just to review very quickly our Esser plan. The intent of the Esser is to help us safely reopen and sustain the safe operation of schools, and as well as address the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on students, including their academic and social needs, social, emotional, mental health needs. We have allowable uses for the funds. They're consistent across all of the Esser programs, and most of which are focusing on student learning loss and the safe reopening of the district. In Esser 3, we have a district entitlement of a little over $13 million, and it is a supplemental program. When in regards to Esser 2, our district entitlement was $5.8 million, and the state, as part of that, supplanted some of their earlier funding to the district and reduced the entitlement by almost $4.3 million. So we only netted about $1.6 million in Esser 2 funding. There's also an Esser 3 supplemental program, which is about $4.3 million, and it was set aside to at least 62.5% to again focus on that learning loss. Proposed use of funds. Well, there's a wide range of activities. Our use of funds plan is provided on the district website under the COVID-19 information link. This plan is adjusted accordingly or throughout the year as we address needs and look at our strategic objectives that the district may have. And so that plan was updated last week and is provided for anybody's review. And we address, we show how the various components of Esser and the are utilized in various activities across multiple years with that use of funds plan. Then the other item as part of our presentation tonight in public meeting is, and again, this is part of why you will see us come back to you with this topic every 6 months, is a requirement to address and revisit our return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. In case you need another acronym, RIPICS, which you will hear every 6 months. You can see our RIPICS plan. It's again a link on the COVID information website through the district's main links, and anybody can go on, look at that, provide us information. And share throughout our entire process. We'll be working with Esser Funds over the next 3 or 4 years, and they'll have the opportunity to use the Let's Talk link to provide feedback And we just want to provide that announcement as part of the public meeting, but it's also an ongoing process. And so in summary, and the RIPIX plan does address several items that are required, and those are listed out in our plan. Again, we've talked through these particular pieces or components. And so just in summary, just a reminder that these funds are one-time funds. They do have the ability to spend out for several years. We have, I think in total with Esser Funds under the multiple programs is about $23.5 million. We spent $6.5 million of those to this point. This year we have about $7.5 million budgeted. Next year we'll have another $7.5, and then the balance would be out there in that would be year 2023, 2024. And so, anyways, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address those. Otherwise, we can proceed with the public meeting.
It's time we proceed with the public comment portion of the meeting. Are there any requests from the audience to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, with the conclusion of public comments and no further presentation, I declare that the public meeting to discuss the district's Esser use of funds plan and return to in-person instruction in continuity of services plan is closed. Now move to our next agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Welch. You also have the next one is to adopt an order to call the 2022 school trustee general election.
Okay, so again tonight we have scheduled the May 7th general trustee election. That is May 7th, 2022. Up on the ballot for this election are places 3, 4, and 5, so we have provided the order of election to move forward with.
I move we adopt the order of election for the trustee general election on Saturday, May 7th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Paige, second by Donna to adopt the order of election for the trustee general election on Saturday, May 7th. Any questions? See none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to act on the 2021-2022 budget amendment.
I move we approve the budget amendment for January 2022. Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn to approve the budget amendment. It was discussed in our 5 o'clock session. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. I'll go back to my bell. Next is to set the July 22nd, 2022 through June 2023 board meeting dates.
I move the board approve the 2022 through 2023 board meeting dates as presented in board book. Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn to approve the 2022-2023 board meeting dates. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to approve a 2021-2022 submission of a class waiver. Ms. Sternheim.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much as a board for what you do for this community and its children. As you can see, I think you can direct your attention to pages 201 and I believe through 203. This time around, we've had 4 campuses in which need waivers. If you can look at Chisholm Ridge needed waivers in the kindergarten and 4th grade. However, they do have a 6th teacher in the kindergarten that will be coming on. I believe she began on January the 13th, but when this report was derived on January the 11th. So this was the waiver situation that we had at that campus. If you also look at Copper Creek needs a waiver in 1st grade in 2 of those sections. They do not currently have I think they currently have they don't currently have any teacher or para recommendations at this time. So when you also look at Dozier needed waivers in 2 grade levels, 2nd and 4th grade. They do have an elementary para position that has
been provided to the campus. They have not made a recommendation for that campus as of yet. And if you look at Gilliland in first grade, there is one waiver that is needed. One of the things that I have talked with a couple of parents, or maybe a couple of parents at each campus, is that we do have a great contingent of parents that are coming back from either charter campuses, parents that I've been in contact with that I've been tracking over time, that through COVID, they had situations. And so those parents are bringing the students back. And sometimes we are making concessions for those students to come back because they have been in facilities to get treatment and things of that nature. So this is a much smaller need for waivers, but the previous students are coming back to this district, and they're happy to come back. Do you have any questions for me?
I was gonna say, I moved to.
I have a question.
Oh, you didn't?
Can you explain to me, indicate that it says we will indicate the reason for requested waiver is due to financial constraints? What does that mean? Just
Yes.
explain that to me, sorry.
I think last time Dr. Chadwell did speak to that when we talked about that. So normally you have an opportunity when you present to TEA, when you talk about your constraints. And so it is a financial constraint because it is a FTE in a teacher situation.
Let's get the motion in second, and then we'll get the questions. Liz, you made the motion?
To approve the admission of the pre-kindergartner through fourth grades class size exemptions as presented.
Second. Motion by Liz, second by Donna. Now questions, Jim?
So we can't afford a teacher? That's how that looks to me. Is that right? We can't afford a teacher?
I'm sorry, I'm not going to say that we can't afford a teacher. A lot of the times when we were looking at educational services and HR, when they're looking at staffing allocations for a campus, they're looking at, different things, projections, because we also get with Mr. Welch on that. And in this situation, unfortunately, with COVID, sometimes we just didn't know exactly what students were coming back, how they were negatively impacted by COVID. So TEA does give us that opportunity to present that because it is a teacher situation problem, not that it is a financial constraint because we don't have the teacher in the position. I hope that makes sense.
It's just a matter of
Do they all
dollars.
say that? Do they all say that? I just haven't noticed.
They all say that.
Every time we
You
do
have
that,
to
it's
have
all
a
every
reason.
time.
Yes,
And
sir.
so $65,000 per waiver, you think of it that way. Every time you add a teacher, you're around $65,000 to $70,000. So I don't know how many waivers we have currently, but that's the.
Well, my question was, some of them already had the double asterisk saying that we had previously approved the waiver. So are we reapproving some waivers for Chisholm Ridge K and 4? Because it indicates they've already had a waiver approved, so.
So I'm going to give you an example. If you look at Chisholm Ridge and you look at just the kindergarten section, they currently have 5 teachers, so that's equivalent to a section.
Right.
So teacher 1 has already had a waiver, teacher 2 has already had a waiver, teacher 3 did not have a waiver. So this time his or her class does have 25 students, therefore precipitating a waiver. Did I answer that?
That does answer that. So when we ask for the waiver for the grade, it's really class specific,
Yes,
not
sir.
grade specific.
Yes, sir.
Got it. That makes
Yes,
all
sir.
sense. Any other
Any questions?
questions?
Run for the whole year?
It goes all the way up into March because you do kind of get a reprieve the last 12 weeks of your school year.
Questions?
Any other questions?
Seeing
Thank you
none,
for
all
your time
those-
and consideration.
Thank you.
I'm
Motion
sorry.
by Liz, second by Donna. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are no. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we're going to, at this time, on behalf of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, I declare an open hearing on the 2020-2021 Texas Academic Performance Report in compliance with Texas Administrative Code Title 19, Chapter 61, Subchapter BB, Commissioner's Rules on Reporting Requirements, Section 61.1022 little c, parentheses, Texas Academic Performance Report. Dr. Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm excited to present to you our district TAPER report. It reflects our 2021 accountability, and as you know, we're not rated this year due to a declared state of disaster. In our 2021 special education determination status, we're in needs of assistance, and that comes from our results, RDA, results-driven accountability report. In our special ed department, under the direction of Dr. Hughes, has already been working on improving in those areas. Now, I'm going to show you some STAR results, And as we're going through, I do want you to know our table report is located on will be located on the district website, available at our schools as well as on the TEA website. I'm going to show you accountability reports or the data comparing our state, region, and the district. Dr. Parker in a previous board meeting showed you very specifically our STAR score report. And as you're looking at this is for all subjects, all grades. And as far as the state, the region, and the district, we're all performing pretty much at the same level. There's very little distinction there. The other area we looked at, that was approaches. And as you know, our federal accountability always deals with meets. That's the area that they feel we need to be at. And as you're looking for all grades and all subjects, the state, the district, and the region are right there together. Now we're looking at reading for approaches. Once again, you see our results are very similar. As far as meets for reading, all grades were very similar. For math approaches, all of our grade levels for the state, region, and district, it's very similar performance there. For the meets in math also, we're a little bit below, but once again, very close together in our performance there. For writing, with all grades, once again, a little bit below, but once again, very much in the ballpark. For meets, once again, we're there. We're 3% below the state and the region for writing. But in science, we're 4% above the region and 6% above the state for our approaches. For science, for meets, once again, we're 4 to 6% above the state and the region. For social studies, we're once again 3 to 5% above the state and the region. For meets, we're 2 to 5% above the state and the region. So once again, we're very similar performance there when we look at our district as a whole. Our attendance, when you look at our attendance compared to the state and region, and remember our attendance is always a year behind. So this is for the 1920 school year. We're right there with the state and the region. And as you look at it, these are all of our groups that show their attendance in our ELs was our lowest attendance rate there. Dropout rate, as you know, we do a very good job in making sure our students stay in our schools and that we account for where everybody goes. And as our district, we were way below the region and the state there for the 7th and 8th grade. High school level also, our district dropout rate is significantly lower than the state and the region. Our graduation cohort groups, when our state looks at our performance, what we do is we look at the 4-year group, the 5-year group, and the 6-year group. And what we're looking there, when we have an accountability year, we're looking to see which group has the highest graduation rate. And typically it's our 5-year group, and ours was at 97.7%. And that's the one, if it was an accountability year, that would have been calculated into our data. College readiness, graduates, and what we do here is we look at the TSI, ACT, SAT, AP, dual credit on-ramps, and our rate of performance here was 41.3% of our students met the standards that were required on those different scores or classes. Our SAT average for us was 1065, where the state was 1019 and the region was 1037. So we performed above both of our both those groups. The ACT, our average was 19.1, the region and the state was 20.2. This shows our student ethnic distribution, and you can see the Hispanic group is our highest group of students, followed by the white population and then the Black students. The state, very similar, only their Hispanic population is much larger. Student demographics, you can see that our economically disadvantaged is still below the state. English learners at 12.5. Students with discretionary placements were below the state, as well as our at-risk is below the state level. Teacher ethnic distributions, you can see right there that we're 79.5% white, where the state is 56.9%. And we're working on trying to get our ethnic population up for some of our teachers and some of our groups to closer match our student populations. Teachers' experience, as you can see, we're very much close to the state level as far as years of experience. Our biggest group is 11 to 20 years experience. That's where most of our teachers are from, followed by 1 to 5 years and then 6 to 10 years. Our enrollment by program, our bilingual ESL, 12%, which is still below the state level. Gifted and talented, 6.9%, which is below the state level. But special ed, as we know, we have a very strong program, 11.3, which is above the state level. Violent and criminal incident reports, these were reported to the state by, and these are actual incidents which we're required to report on, 57 incidents of controlled substance, 18 incidents of felonies, and 84 for fighting. And then our final slide here shows the students who graduated in 2020 who were attending colleges for 2021, 234 in public colleges, 232 in 2 years, 29 independent colleges, 22 they know they went to college, they don't know where, 279 said they were, but they couldn't find them. And so that's out of 1,518 graduates there. Any questions, comments? That's the last slide.
But Dr. Jones, isn't this only in Texas colleges?
This is Texas colleges.
So if anyone went out of state, it would not be included here.
That was a lot of information, Dr. Jones. At this time, the hearing is open to public comment. Please step to the podium if you wish to be heard. At this time, the public hearing of the TAPR for the district is closed. Please be advised that the TAPR and this report will be posted on the district website for further public review. Thank you, Dr. Mary Jones, the first principal at Highland Middle School. Only I would know that, right? Because I was here with Mr. Absher and yourself. All right, next is to consider approval of a resolution for the EMS ISD Board of Trustees regarding additional leave for COVID-19 employee illnesses.
Good evening, school board. Dr. Chadwell, I want to thank you for your service to our district, and this is an area where our employees are extremely grateful for what you have provided for us. At this point, we are coming forward and asking you to enact the resolution and extend it to June 30th. And this is just due to the increase in the surge that, you know, when we went out for Christmas break, I don't think we all knew we were going to come back to such a significant surge. But to date, we have had 973 employees that have needed this service that you have provided and extended to them. Just since we got back from Christmas break, 578. So the recommendation is to extend the resolution to the end of this work calendar, and hopefully we'll be past this by the end of the year. But if in case we are not, we will make sure we bring it before the resolution expires.
I move that the board consider the approval of the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Marilyn. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none, motion carries 7-0. Next,
Mr.
you have
Mogan.
this one too?
Mr. Mogan is sick, so I'm going to cover this for him.
All right.
We do have another teacher that we would like to pursue for contract abandonment. This is a teacher at Chisholm Trail, at Prairie Vista Middle School, who received an opportunity to move into corporate America. And though he was told, we were asking him to remain in his position until we could find a suitable replacement. He did abandon and really didn't have much concern over his certificate because he was moving into corporate, but we want to continue the practice of setting the standard, that we're here for our kids. And, you know, we celebrate you moving in other areas, but don't abandon our kids in the process. So we're asking that we can seek contract abandonment on this teacher.
I move the board finds that good cause did not exist under section 21.105, parentheses, C, close parentheses, parentheses, 2, close parentheses, of the Texas Education Code for Mr. Carlos Rodriguez to abandon his contract for the 2021-2022 school year. The board did not consent to his resignation, and that the board authorizes the superintendent to file a complaint with the State Board of Educator certification to seek sanctions for his abandonment of contract.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none, motion carries 7-0. We're going to now move to Mr. Billy Kidd, and we have several purchasing and change orders. The first is to act on a purchase and installation of artificial turf at Chisholm Trail and Saginaw High School competition fields.
Good evening, Dr. Chadwell, President Newcomb, members of the board. In December, we provided an update for the 2017 bond progress and discussed planned projects for 2022, and we'd be bringing pricing to you at further dates. The board agenda item identifies the procurement method, which is the One GPA Government Procurement Alliance Purchasing Cooperative for the proposal for Hellas Construction that provides cost and scope of work to be performed at each campus. The turf installation will begin in May and is expected to be completed in mid-July. With the completion of these two projects, which is Saginaw High School and Chisholm Trail High School competition football fields, it will complete the 2017 bond work for synthetic turf throughout the district. The cost of the work in the Hellas proposal is in line with what was budgeted. The recommendation is to award Hellas Construction Incorporated for the purchase and installation of synthetic turf at Chisholm Trail High School and Saginaw High School for their competition football fields in the amount of $1,488,880.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. Would you speak a little bit about the turf? We're switching turf now, right? From the coconut one that we put in at several fields to a newer grade or different grade?
The product's actually called Ecotherm, and this is sort of a manufactured infill for this turf versus the coconut husk that we have at several of the surfaces. This coconut husk obviously was initially approved because of its ability to provide a cooler surface for our athletes. It was studied and the data was there to present those findings, and that's why the district went with those at the time that they chose to use that coconut product. As we move forward and as they develop, constantly Hellas tries to develop additional infills that can create the same results as far as cooling of the temperature. So they came up with this Ecotherm, which is like a plastic porous pellet that gives the ability to retain water inside that pellet for an extended period of time, that it absorbs through dew or through the rain, or it just takes out of the air through humidity, and allows to provide that same type of cooling for our athletes versus the rubber fill that Hellas initially came out with when they replaced the old AstroTurf system. So we looked at this, we evaluated it, and determined that it created the same value for our students at a better value as far as cost.
And it's about the same price because you said it came in under budget or at budget.
Well, the reason it's actually a lot less because you don't have to install the irrigation system that comes with the coconut fiber, so you save substantially per field for the installation of this Ecotherm material.
Any idea what the lifespan of this?
It's the same. It's the same lifespan. as their other fields. The difference in this one is because of the way the coconut would perform. You know, if you didn't obviously keep it irrigated and hydrated properly, then it became light and unweighted and could potentially blow out. And there was a bigger chance of constantly having to measure the Gmax rating to provide the support that you needed on the concussion basis protocols. And this material, as well as the rubber infill, you may have some, you know, grooming that you need to do, but not to the extent that you have to with the coconut fiber.
How long has this product been out? Is it?
This product, they initially came out with it around 2016, but they just didn't have enough fields out there to create the data to make sure that it performed the way they expected it to.
So it wasn't offered to us when we.
It was not offered at that time because there was not any data to present to you to tell you that this was a field that was something that you were looking for to create that safety factor as far as temperatures goes with our students.
How long did the one last? No, forgive my ignorance.
I'm sorry.
I was asking how long is the lifespan is similar to the other one? I don't know if the other.
They're typically 8 to 10 years.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to approve a change order for Lake Country Elementary School. It's to our advantage.
It is to our advantage.
Make a motion to approve.
There we go.
I make a motion to approve the proposed change order for Lake Country Elementary School for a savings in the amount of $114,280.34.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz. Questions on this change order? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to approve the change order for security upgrades at multiple campuses and the gym night facility additions and renovations.
I make a motion to approve the proposed changes for the security upgrades at multiple campuses and gym night maintenance facility additions and renovations for a savings in the amount of $222,466.51.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz. Questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to approve a change order for Copper Creek.
I make a motion to approve the proposed change order for Copper Creek Elementary School for a savings in the amount of $255,178.36.
Second.
By Tim, second by Liz. Any questions on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next two is approve the change order. Now this one kind of changes a little bit, I noticed there, Billy, for Boswell High School athletics additions and renovations.
Yes, so the work along with other discovered items have increased the GMP to complete the construction of Boswell High School athletics and additions and renovations project. Mr. Welch at a previous board meeting had reviewed with the board the additional scope to replace the failing visitor bleachers at Boswell High School. That, along with other, unknown conditions as you move through a project of this size, has created some deficits as we move forward with this contract. The original GMP, along with additional credits, equals $50,069,812. The additional scope increase in material costs, changes in original scope, city codes, construction document changes, and added scope to the project have increased this project by $5,179,513. With the original contingency and additional credits that we were able to capture along the way of this project, the difference, or the total dollars needed to complete the project, is $1,428,652.65. The recommendation is for the board to approve a change order to increase the GMP of the Boswell High School additions and renovations projects by the amount of $1,428,652.65. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Tim. to approve the change order, bringing the guaranteed maximum price to $50,283,736.65. Questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Kidd. Thank you, Lauren, for bringing here. For VOKs in the audience too, so we appreciate your attendance and your work on this also. All right, next action item is to consider the approval or resolution declaring an emergency purchase and delegation of authority for repairs of Chisholm Trail High School retaining wall.
I move we approve the board resolution declaring emergency purchase and delegation of authority for repairs of the Chisholm Trail High School retaining wall as presented in the report section.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Liz. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. That gets us through that portion of the action items. We next move to the routine and monthly reports. Any questions on those? Seeing none, Dr. Chapel, review the 2022 board planning calendar. It's on page 304.
Yes, sir, page 304. And if you'll notice, we have finance report and budget status. We'll start to work towards our planning for the 22-23 budget. Also, we have the quarterly demographic report for the fourth quarter 20 construction update. And we'll start with the 22-23 campus staffing proposal. We are going to try to provide some of those staffing recommendations earlier in the cycle than we have in previous years on those for sure positions that we need for growth, for enrollment growth for teachers, so that we can recruit earlier and be able to secure those positions much earlier. We also have a pre-kindergarten report, and you'll see under action items, we have the consider approval resolution to extend depository with Frost Bank, acts on bids and proposals for pupil transportation services. It's an extension. The consider approving computer replacement teacher laptops and student device lease, public hearing on the MSISD District of Innovation, approval of the District of Innovation plan at that same meeting, and the 21-22 submission of a class size waiver to TEA. That's it.
All right. And if you have questions on those or see an item you'd like to add to the agenda item, please let us know. Assuming Dr. Chapel or myself. The consent agenda item is next up.
I would like, President.
Are you going to do the removal?
I would like to do the removal.
The chair recommends Ms. Hatley.
Okay, page 328 is the 2022-2023 school calendar. I'd like to have that removed from the consent agenda.
All right, that motion requires a second.
Second.
Motion by Page, so we have a
Second by Page.
second by Page, motion by Liz. Any questions on removing that? We'll vote on it separately. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Now we will, we're going to move to vote on the consent agenda as normal, then we'll come back to the 2022.
I move we approve the consent agenda as amended.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Paige, second by Liz to approve the consent agenda as amended. Question on that? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Now we go back to the 2022-2023 school calendar.
Okay.
Dr. Chadwell?
Yes, thank you. There are a lot of numbers on this page, and there's one single digit that's incorrect. And so you have an update for you at your dais, at your chair, and that was the August 15th, 2022 first day of school. It says in the report 2021. So we need to make that change so that it would be official.
All right.
There were more changes than that. Does it matter? There were a couple others.
Sure.
So they're on here. There just were a couple others.
Okay, thank you. You wanted to know what those are?
Do we need to, or
Yes,
we're just
I think
approving the
that's
one
good.
that's at our place? Okay.
We are, but I think it's good for us to say it publicly, so that's good.
In
Yes.
the center column, we made corrections under the professional development student holidays. January 2nd, we switched that from 2022 to 2023. We also updated February 21st, 2023. And then we also updated August 15th from 2021 to 2022. And for the first day of the spring semester, January 3rd, we changed that from 2022 to 2023. So the calendar that you have in front of you has all corrections.
All right. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the calendar as 2022, 2023 calendars in front of you.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Paige. Questions on the calendar? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. As far as presidential announcements, again, thank you for the acknowledgement and the appreciation shown to us tonight and for the goodies here in front of us. We appreciate that and much more. We appreciate each one of you in this room that support our kids every day as well as our entire staff. So give that right back to you. Thank you for all you do for the students in our district. So on behalf of the board, we appreciate you serving our 21,000 plus students. And again, thank you for the gifts that we have tonight. If anybody else would like to comment on that, I'll sure yield any time. But they all agree with me. Thank you for all the stuff. Right, thank you. Okay. All right. I had a great time at Marine Creek today and headed to Boswell on Wednesday. Dr. Chappell?
Yes. All right, you'll see in your packet with superintendent's announcements, we have the EMS Dance Expo coming up on February the 3rd, middle school open house on February the 7th. We have a special board meeting for a bond workshop I mentioned earlier on February the 8th at 6 o'clock. Also, STEM Showcase on March 3rd at the HCTC, and the rest of the items there are denoted. Just to echo what Mr. Newcomb said, we just appreciate very much everything y'all do every day. We know there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into preparing for a board meeting, hundreds of pages to read, hundreds of decisions to make over the course of a year, and we just appreciate the efforts y'all go to in doing that. I think this is a fun month for me because I get to see kids get to know who you are and what you do. I mean, because a lot of times kids don't know what a board member is or a superintendent is. I explain I'm the principal of the principals. They kind of get that at elementary. I don't know what y'all say, but I'm sure it's kind of tough because, you know, for the younger kids, they just, school is, right? But there's a lot that happens behind the scenes to make things happen. And so I just really appreciate all y'all do and your service to this district and this community. Thank you.
The middle school just kind of wanted to know that. I was impressed to know the word hierarchy.
Yeah.
Where the hierarchy was I his principal's boss, and where
Yeah, there
this
you go.
Dr. Chapel got fit in all of this.
I'm his boss too.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
They usually want to ask you if for high school, is it open lunch? Okay, there's that one. That's the popular one. Can you make it open lunch or give us more time in the passing period or give us more chicken nuggets? You know, there's, you know, real priority things.
This one was code of conduct. I got a question about, can you change the code of conduct?
Yeah.
Every year, I said, we prove that every year.
Yeah,
But we enjoyed it. Seeing there's no further business to come before this board, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. Adjourn.